Okay, thank you. Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope everybody has joined in. Uh, we can start session in a minute so that whoever is still in the process of joining can join. And then we can start. We can wait for a minute. Morning, Shailesh. Whoever has joined in can just quickly confirm in the chat box so that I can know who have joined. Good morning, Mansha. Good morning, Viraj. Good morning, Kushma. Good morning, Shruti. Okay, I think we can start now. So, we will start with Ind AS 24 related party disclosures. That is the session for topic for the day. So you must have studied similar standard under ICAI as well, and must have seen how the related party transactions needs to be disclosed in the financial statements, right? And who all parties needs to be treated as related party. So first step is identification of the related party, and the next is identification of the transactions and balances with those related parties, and then disclosure of those transactions and outstanding balances as on the reporting date, right? So this is a useful information for the users of the financial statements to understand what is the volume of related party transactions. Now, what is the objective? Why we are doing so? Is there any specific objective which we are trying to achieve? So, the objective of the standard is to ensure that entities' financial statements contain the necessary disclosures, right? With respect to related party relationships, related party transactions, outstanding balances with those related parties at the reporting date, that is generally 31st March of every year when we prepare the financial statements. And if there are any commitments related with related parties, for example, sometimes, holding company and subsidiary company gives, commitments on behalf of each other, or gives some sort of financial guarantees, or, financial commitments or comfort letters. So those, called commitments that needs to be disclosed. Now, why we are doing so? So sometimes it happens that whenever there are any related parties, so transactions between the two entities who are related, cannot may not be on arm's length, right? So holding company might be, selling the product at cost to the subsidiary, or vice versa, or subsidiary company might be purchasing, the raw material from the related party or holding company or any fellow subsidiary company or JV or associate at below market prices. So it may affect the profitability of either of the entities, right? So we generally do the transactions at fair value or arm's length with any third party, but that price may have been impacted because of these relationships. Now, users of the financial statements will be able to understand that how much volume of these transactions are there, and if they are not at fair price, then probably they can make a better decision if they are aware of about such transactions. So that's the only objective. So this standard will not talk about any accounting, only the disclosures, right, of these transactions, right? So accounting will be governed for all such transactions by the respective standards only, right? So as such, there is no specific guidance or different accounting requirements for these transactions. The only objective of the standard is to disclose all such transactions in the financial statements, right? So objective of the standard is to draw attention to the possibility that the financial statements may have been affected by the existence of above mentioned related party relationships and transactions with them, right? So this is the objective of the standard, right? Now, what is the scope? Which all parties would be regarded as related parties? What all disclosures are required to be made? Are there any exemptions or exceptions, to any specific related party or to any sort of specific disclosures that we will, discuss. So standard has to be applied in identification of the related parties, right? So standard defines a related party term. Whoever, meeting the definition of a related party as per this standard will be a related party for the purpose of disclosure, right? So all those parties who are meeting the definition of the related party as per this standard will be regarded as related parties to the reporting entity. That is the entity for which we are preparing the financial statements. That will be called reporting entity. And if there are any transactions with those related parties during the year, then all those transactions will be, required to be disclosed as per this standard. So first step is identification of the related party, which all parties are my related parties, right? Then we will identify the transactions which have taken place during the year with all such related parties. So next step is identification of the related party transactions. Then third is identifying the outstanding balances between an entity, that is the reporting entity, and its related party. Now, for example, during the year, holding company has sold any of the products to the subsidiary company or associate or JV, which will be, related party to the company, reporting entity. Now, if those balances are not collected at the year end, then they will be showing up as debtors in the balance sheet of the holding company, right? Standalone financial of the holding company. So those outstanding balances we need to disclose in the disclosures, right? Identifying if there are any commitments given by the holding company to the subsidiary company or vice versa, or holding company or the reporting entity for its any of joint ventures, joint operation or associate or vice versa. So if there are any such commitments which have been given by either of the party who are related to each other, those commitments needs to be identified for the purpose of disclosure under this standard, right? So this is the fourth step. Then identifying the circumstances in which disclosures of the above items are to be made. So we will, identify which all transactions have taken place and how those transactions needs to be disclosed, right? So if there are sale purchase transactions for the, goods and services the companies, having business in. So that sale purchase needs to be disclosed separately. If there are any fixed asset purchase or sale happened during the year, apart from, normal goods and services sale purchase, those needs to be disclosed separately, right? If there are any other transactions, for example, holding company has given a loan to the subsidiary company or vice versa, then loan transaction is to be disclosed separately. So basis on the nature and category of transaction, we need to make separate disclosures. We don't need to club them, right? So all the transactions needs to be disclosed separately. I will, show some listed company disclosure towards the end of the session, how the disclosures actually take place in the financial statements. Then determining the disclosures to be made about the above items and what are the nature of these transactions, what is the, impact of these transactions. So everything needs to be disclosed about these transactions. So this is all, the scope of the standard. Now, disclosures will be required in individual financial statements as well as consolidated financial statements, right? So when company prepares only standalone or individual financial statements and does not prepare consolidated financial statements, then those financial statements will be required to be complied with this standard. So related party disclosures will be made, in the individual financial statements. When company prepares the consolidated financial statements as well, apart from the standalone financial statements, then in the consolidated financial statements as well, related party disclosures would be required, right? Now, as you know, whenever we prepare the consolidated financial statement, so all the intra-group transactions, and outstanding balances at the reporting date gets eliminated. So if there are any transactions between the holding company and the subsidiary company, or any outstanding balances are there on the reporting date, debtor in one books, creditor in another books. So all these, transactions and balances gets eliminated while preparing the consolidated financial statements, right? But if the holding company is an investment entity, right? So it does not consolidate its subsidiary, right? For example, mutual funds, insurance companies, asset management companies, all these funds who basically purchases the shares of other companies only for the purpose of, uh, investment. They don't intend to govern or direct that company's, operations, right? So these investment entities are exempt under Ind AS 110 from preparing the consolidated financial statements or consolidating these entities which they have acquired only for the purpose of investment. So because they are not preparing or consolidating those entities, right? Even if they have more than 50% stake in a particular company as an investment, they will not be consolidating that company. So in that case, disclosures will be required. But if the holding company prepares the consolidated financial statements, then for those transactions which are eliminated and the balances which are eliminated while the consolidated financial statements are prepared, so those transactions don't need to be disclosed because now the entity is a one legal entity, right? So Mansha is asking, Adani Group was in the news for not complying with related party disclosures. So I will not comment upon any ongoing news. That might be the case. There might be other issues as well. But certainly, if we are not giving related party disclosures, that will be regarded as a non-compliance with the Ind AS, right? So now, what we have understood so far, that the objective of the standard is clear: to disclose all the related party relationships and all the related party transactions which have been taken place during the year, and the corresponding balances at the reporting date with those related parties, right? So this is the clear objective. Now, what are the disclosures required? Disclosures are required in the individual financial statements as well as consolidated financial statements, right? Both the financial statements will be required to be complied with this Ind AS. Now, in case of consolidated financial statements, because we consolidate subsidiaries, right, and JVs and associates. So whichever transactions are getting eliminated while preparing the consolidated financial statements, those transactions or those relationships are not required to be disclosed in the consolidated, because consolidated financial statements is for a group, and group includes all the subsidiaries they together. So they are treated as one legal entity. So we cannot disclose the transactions among themselves, right? Now, disclosures not required when it would conflict with the reporting entity's duties of confidentiality, right? So sometimes, for example, I can take the example of a bank, although Ind AS are not yet applicable on the banks. But in case of banks, there might be certain entities which are related parties to the bank as well, and they are having the account as well with the bank, right? And now, because the prime responsibility of the bank is not to tell the account balances of any of its customer to any other party, right, other than the customer. Now, because of this confidentiality clause, which is inherent in the banking business, so bank will skip disclosing the outstanding balances, with those related parties, because it will conflict with their confidentiality or, prime duties. So that would be an example for this. Now, entity is prohibited So this is the one scenario where disclosure can be skipped. This is the another scenario. Entity is prohibited by the statute, regulator, or similar competent authority to disclose certain information. So if there is any law or any sort of regulatory guidance or issued to any entity that not to disclose a particular set of transactions or not to disclose the transactions with a particular entity, then that can also be skipped because India cannot overrule the existing law in the country, right? So these are the two exceptions which the standard has given to us, in which case we will not be disclosing all the disclosures, and we will be limiting our disclosures to the extent that we are complied with these laws and the confidentiality clauses as well, right? So that is the exception to the scope. Now, again, so purpose of the standard, as we have already discussed, that is to make the users of the financial statements aware about the related party relationships that exist and transactions with those related parties, if there are any, and the outstanding balances, so that they can take informed decisions whether they want to deal with the company in certain manner. For example, they want to invest in the shares of the company or not. So that decision can be dependent on these things. So if there are voluminous transactions with the related parties and which might not be at arm's length price, then it would be a risky investment for any investor to buy the shares of a particular company who is doing lots of related party transactions which are suspicious, right? So this is one of the indicator about the quality of the financial position of the company, right? So it is quite probable that the related party relationships may have an effect on the profit and loss and the financial position of the entity. The effect gets manifested through transactions that are between the related parties may not be entered with unrelated parties. So there might be certain transactions which have taken place only because of the relationships. If there was no relationship, these transactions would not have happened in first place, right? So this is only because of related party relationships these transactions have taken place. So this is a indicator about the quality of the profit and loss and the financial position of the company, right? For example, an entity may sell goods to its parent at cost, while it will not be selling the goods and services at cost to any third parties, right? Again, next scenario is transactions with unrelated parties get influenced because of the related party relationships. For example, S Limited, a subsidiary of H Limited. So S Limited is a subsidiary, H Limited is a holding company. In a steel manufacturing, used to purchase billets from UR Limited. So UR Limited is any unrelated third party, right? Third party. H Limited acquires 100% stake in FS Limited, who is also in the business of manufacturing billets. Now, FS Limited is now a fellow subsidiary of S Limited because S Limited and FS Limited both are now subsidiaries of H Limited. Now, H Limited may instruct its subsidiary S Limited not to purchase the billets from UR Limited, but to purchase all the billets from FS Limited, right? So this may impact, the business of a particular company, right? So FS Limited might be, selling the billets at higher price or lower price. So that will affect the profitability of the subsidiary company. So because of these relationships, transactions may have an impact which wouldn't be there had the relationship was not there, right? So that is the prime objective of the standard. So if there are any related party relationships and the transactions with them, that needs to be disclosed, because of course the standard cannot prohibit, or cannot come and ask any company that don't do related party transactions. So that is a business call. But a standard may only require the disclosures about them so that everybody knows which all transactions are related party transactions in the books of the company, right? So that is the objective. So Shruti is saying, can you please explain the exception again? Okay. So exceptions basically whenever there is a conflict, between the standard requirements and the duties of the entity or confidentialities in their business, like for example, banks I have taken. So in that case, banks may, do certain limited disclosures which are complied with the standard as well and doesn't, uh, uh, give a non-compliance with any of their confidentiality clauses, right? Similarly, if there are any laws or bylaws or regulations issued by the regulator, so those also needs to be complied. And we can, say that these disclosures are made because we cannot, because of our confidentiality or, regulatory guidance available, we cannot disclose this. For example, banks may skip, to disclose any balances for any of its customer who is also a related party with the bank, right? Now, because the whole standard revolves around the related party. So first we need to understand what is the related party as per this standard, right? So whoever is a related party as per this standard will only be covered for the purpose of, this standard. Now, a related party is a person or an entity that is related to the reporting entity. So it can be a individual person, or it can be a entity. For example, it can be a partnership. Okay. It can be a private limited company. It can be a limited company, or it can be a any other, body corporate. Okay. Right. So all will be covered within the word entity. And person is the individual, and individual uh, relationships, close family member. Okay. We will understand who are close family members, right? So individuals as well as body corporates, may be a related party to the reporting entity, right? Reporting entity. So whenever I say reporting entity during the entire session, it means we are preparing the financial statements for this entity. And in Ind AS 24, we are going to apply for this reporting entity, right? So reporting entity means the entity for which we are preparing the financial statements and we will be making the related party disclosures, right? Now, reporting entity is also defined by the standard, is an entity that is the preparing financial statements. The two types of related party relationships, are possible here. One relationship is between the reporting entity and a person, or the other relationship is between the reporting entity and the another entity or entities, right? So, body corporate as well as individual persons, both are covered within the definition of the related party, right? Certain other definitions, although not defined by this standard, but which we will be talking about frequently during the discussion today. So I have just reproduced those definitions from other standards, right? For a quick recap, control. You must have studied this definition under Ind AS 110, right? Control exists when the investor is exposed or has a rights to variable returns from its involvement with the investee and has the ability to affect those returns through its power over the investee, right? So this is the definition you must have already studied. Joint control is contractually agreed sharing of control of an arrangement which exists only when the decisions about the relevant activities require unanimous consent of the parties sharing the control, right? So in joint control, there can be two parties, right, who are jointly controlling a particular entity. So that is treated as joint control. Under joint control, you must have studied there are two, scenarios. Either it could be treated as a joint operation or it could be treated as a joint venture, right? So both are governed by the joint control, right? And significant influence is the third category. So this is the strongest, right? This is next level and this is the last level of the influence, right? So significant influence is the power to participate in the financial and operating policies decisions of the investee, but not to control those policies, right? So significant influence is when I have the right to say something and I expect that other person, will be, buying in my, say. So, but I cannot force my say on them. So significant influence is I have the right to say something with a reasonable expectation that other person listens to me and acts accordingly, right? So that is a layman language of the significant influence. Joint control is when I, along with other party, control a particular entity. So we both parties can, direct or govern anything and everything for that entity. So that is treated as a joint control. And control when I can individually control anything and everything for an entity, right? So that is the control. So example could be for the control, it would be subsidiary, it could be JV or joint control operation, JO, or it could be associate, right? Right? You must have already studied all these standards from uh, which I have taken these definitions. So control, joint control, and significant influence are discussed in detail in the chapters Ind AS 110, consolidated financial statements, Ind AS 111, joint arrangements, and Ind AS 28, investments in associates and JVs, right? So these are the standards where all these must have been discussed in detail, right? Okay, so should we be saying Ind AS 110 is not yet done? Doesn't matter. So for our today's discussion, we need to understand there are three types of influences. One is the control, another is joint control, and the last is significant influence. Control means whatever I say has to be accepted by the other party. That is called control. Joint control, two parties, whatever say mutually has to be accepted by the third party to whom we are exercising control upon, right? And significant influence, I have the right to say something. He, is reasonably expected to listen to me and act accordingly, right? But I cannot force my decision. That is called significant influence, right? Now, one more definition before we actually kick off with the standard requirement is key management personnel. So you must have seen there are board of directors, there is a CMD, CFO, company secretary, and many directors, executive, non-executive, and other parties who are basically, forming up some certain committees for, doing any sort of discussions, meetings around the day-to-day affairs of the company, strategic decisions, planning, budgeting, etc., etc., etc. Right. So all these parties within a single term regarded as key management personnel who basically takes all the decision on behalf of the legal entity, because legal entity cannot take decision on its own. It has to be run by certain set of people, right? That certain set of people is regarded as key management personnel, right? Now key management personnel are those persons having authority and responsibility for planning, directing, and controlling the activities of the entity directly or indirectly, including any director, whether executive or otherwise, of that entity. Right? So KMP means any person or a group of persons or the committees, right, who are actually involved or casted with the responsibility of doing all the planning for the future affairs of the company, directing how the affairs needs to be conducted, and controlling, those affairs or activities of the entity, either directly, that is by exercising their individual power, for example, CMD, CEO, chairman, etc., or indirectly through some other, person, for example, directors who are appointed by the company. Director may be a executive director or a non-executive director. Both are covered, right? Under Ind AS 18, non-executive directors are not covered, but under Ind AS 24, non-executive directors are also covered, right? So all these people or set of people will be regarded as a KMP for our discussion. Now, whenever I say KMP, KMP means any person who is meeting this definition, right? Now, the definition includes both executive as well as non-executive directors. So please remember that all sort of directors, all types of directors are covered under the KMP who have the responsibility for the management and direction of a significant part of the business, right? It is not necessary that these people should have a director designation. They might be, given certain other designations. We don't need to stick to the designation of a particular person. We just need to see the substance over whom, whether that person is having the responsibility and authority to, do planning, directing, or controlling of the activities of the entity or not. So it might be regarded as vice president, it might be regarded as a president, it might be regarded as a manager. So we will not go by the designation or the wordings, given to that person. We will see what powers actually that person has. If those powers are meeting the definition of the KMP, he will be regarded as the KMP, irrespective of the designation on his visiting card, right? The term also includes members of the management committees if those committees have the authority for planning, directing, and controlling. So basically, we need to stick to the three keywords. Number one is planning, number two is directing, and number three is controlling of activities of the entity, right? So if this is the deciding factor, whether a particular person or group of person will be regarded as KMP or not, right? So if that person or group of persons have the authority and responsibility for planning, directing, controlling, then he will be regarded or they will be regarded as KMP, otherwise not. We will not go by designations. Okay. Is that clear? Just type in the chat box so that I can, move on. Or if there is any doubt, just, ping that as well. Okay. So Tanisha is saying clear, Pushma is saying clear. You, Paul, I heard. Seen you first time, Paul. Okay. He's saying clear. Okay. Few more definitions. So there are lots of definitions. Government. I think we have studied this definition before, right? Under which Ind AS? Ind AS 20, right? So same definition we have studied earlier. So government refers to government agencies and similar bodies, whether local, national, or international, right? So government of USA, if has any control on any Indian entity, will that be regarded as a related party? That we will see in the definition of related party. But certainly, government of USA will be covered in the definition of government, because here the definition says local, national, or international. Any government will be a government, right? Government related entity is an entity that is controlled, jointly controlled, significantly influenced by a government, right? So this definition we have already discussed previously, no problem. Okay, now we will enter into the main discussion of the related party, which all parties will be considered as related parties. That now we need to understand, and that is the backbone of this standard. If we are crystal clear about these relationships, it will be easier for us, to say which party is a related party and not, and accordingly the disclosure would be applicable. If we are not clear or we are not able to identify basis on the facts and circumstances given to us that whether a particular party is a related party or not, then we are not, able to say whether disclosures would be required or not, right? So this is the key important thing about this standard. So please listen carefully with full attention. A person or a close member of that person's family is related to the reporting entity. Reporting entity means the entity for which we are preparing the financial statements, and we will be applying Ind AS 24 on that entity's financial statements. If that person has control, joint control over the reporting entity. right? So Mr. A has a 50% shareholding in, suppose, ABC Limited. Okay. So Mr. A is controlling ABC Limited, yes or no? Yes. Mr. A and Mr. B jointly holds, 60% of the shareholding of the reporting entity. Then Mr. A and Mr. B jointly controls the reporting entity, yes or no? So here we are talking about the individuals. Okay. So individuals can be a person or a close member of that person's family, right? If he or along with their close family members controls or jointly controls any reporting entity, then he as well as his close family members will be the related party. Yes or no? Yes. So control or jointly control. If I have on any entity, then I will be the related party. Second category has significant influence, SI, over the reporting entity. I may have 10% oblique 15% oblique 20% stake in a particular company or shareholding, and I might influence the management or management committee or decision makers or KMP of the company, whatever I want to say. For example, if I want to say that, boss, please declare dividend at the rate of 10% this year, and I can influence the management to actually go and declare that dividend, then it means I have a significant influence over the entity, right? So if I have that significant influence, then I will be regarded as a related party. Or this significant influence I can have either myself or along with my close family members, right? So I and my close family members will be regarded as a related parties to this reporting entity. Clear? Third, either I am a member of the KMP of the reporting entity or of the parent of the reporting entity. Suppose reporting, there is a H Limited, its subsidiary is S Limited, right? So either I am the KMP of reporting entity, which is a this entity, reporting entity, or I am the KMP of its parent company, that is holding company. So if I am key managerial person of the reporting entity itself, I will anyway be related, right? And if I am not the KMP of the reporting entity, but I am the KMP of its parent company or holding company, then definitely I will also be a related party for this reporting entity, that is subsidiary. So now the thumb rule is for the subsidiary companies, KMP of the subsidiary, that is the reporting entity, as well as KMP of its parent or holding company will be regarded as a related party related parties, right? So whenever you see any financial statements of a company which is a subsidiary of another company, then if you see in the financial statements of that company, all the KMPs of that company as well as all the KMPs of the holding company will be disclosed as a related party, right? Okay. Now Manoj is asking how to identify the significant influence. So although the standard does not give any uh, threshold, right? And indices are all, substance based. So we can see if there are any, decisions which are being participated by me, and those are influenced by my say, I will have the significant influence. But for, our understanding purposes, I can say if anybody who holds 20% or more shareholding in any company will be regarded as a significant influence. Okay. But although there are no such monetary limits given by the standard only talks about the substance over time, right? So the definition of significant influence, which we have just discussed, is this. That is the given by the standard. So significant influence is the power to participate, power to say something. I have the right or power to say something, right? And direct or guide any operating policies or decisions of the other company, but I cannot force my say on those, policies or the decisions. I have the right or power to participate or say something, and it is a reasonable expectation that other party will listen to that and act accordingly. But I cannot control or force on those policies or decisions, right? So that is the significant influence. Clear? Any doubts here? Just let me know, clear, not clear, or whatever doubts you have. So Mansha is asking, can trust or NGO be a related party? Of course. So see, we are not going by the setup or the legal entity status of any person or any entity. Okay. If any entity or person or group of persons or any set of body corporate or active entities meeting the definition of related party, it will be regarded as related party. There is no doubt about that. So we will stick to the definition of related party, and we will disregard whatever the legal status or of that entity is. Okay. So that is not to be considered. Clear, Mansha? Now, we have understood that person and the close members of the that person can be related party. So person can definitely be related party, but which all close members will be covered within the definition of the related party, right? So that we need to understand now. Close members of the family of a person are the one who may be expected to influence or be influenced by that person in their dealings with the entity, right? It includes person's children. So in our example, ABC Limited was the reporting entity, right? And Mr. A, who is holding, say, 55% stake, is the related party to the ABC Limited because it has control, right? Right? Now, who all relatives or close family members of Mr. A will also be covered under the definition of related party, right? So, person's children. So, Mr. A's son as well as daughter. Okay. Now, the standard has used the word children, right? It does not say that son or daughter only, so both will be covered. It does not say that married or unmarried. So, daughters after marriage will also be covered, right? So, the standard uses the word children. Children means son and daughter both. Then, next is spouse. So, if Mr. A's wife, right? Or if it would have been Mrs. A, then Mr. A would be the husband, right? So spouse means husband as well as wife, right? Or the domestic partner. Now, see, under AS 18, you wouldn't see this term, although, son, daughter, and wife or spouse is also there, but domestic partner is not there, right? Because India's AS 18 was written in Indian context, right? And when the standard was written, this domestic partner live-in relationships thing, might not have been explored in India, right? But now standards are global. And from that perspective, because these certain relationships are, legal relationships over there in the those countries, Western countries. So they have considered this domestic partner as well. So even if the marriage did not take place, so if they are having a relationship with any of their partners, so those domestic partners will be covered, right? Because they have influence similar to what wife has or husband has, so they are also covered. Next is brother of Mr. A, sister of Mr. A, right? And father and mother. So this is the category A, which are super close members, right? So category A, super close. Category B, children of that person's spouse. Now, if suppose Mr. A has children with Mrs. A, right? But Mrs. A, might have had a marriage earlier and also has children with her ex-husband. So that person's children of that person's spouse will also be covered, who are actually not the children of Mr. A, but Mr. B, right? So those are also covered. And similarly, the domestic partner's children. So if the domestic partner has the children with any third person as well, those are also covered. So because they are treated as equivalent to the children of Mr. A only, right? So this is a category 2. And the third category is dependents of that person or that person's spouse or domestic partner's dependents. Now, who can be these dependents? That is father and mother of that spouse, that is mother-in-law, father-in-law for the spouse, as well as mother-in-law, father-in-law for the domestic partner, right? So this is a category 3. So all these are covered by the standard in the definition of the close related, close family members of the person. Clear? Okay. So Mansha is asking adopted or stepchildren also included. Now, because in this standard as such, there is no clarity around this, but standard uses the word children, right? If legally adopted or stepchildren is meeting the definition of a children in the legal law, then definitely, certainly, they also needs to be covered, right? Clear? So close family members is children of the person, children of the spouse, children of the domestic partner, and brother, sister, father, mother of the person. Children of the spouse and children of the domestic partner, second category. And the third is dependent of the person, that is father, mother, dependent on the person's spouse, that is mother-in-law, father-in-law, and domestic partner, that is mother-in-law and father-in-law of the domestic partner, right? So one simple way I will suggest to you for your quick revision during the exam days, you just prepare some tree where you can put the name of the person in the center and all the relationships, and just form that circle along with the arrows that all these relationships are close family members. So it will be a eye catching revision uh, cheat sheet for you during the exam days, instead of getting into the literature during those days, right? Okay, let's do this example. Mr. A holds 51% in equity share capital of A Limited. A Limited has no other form of share capital. As Mr. A controls A Limited, he is a related party, right? Now, Mrs. A, the wife of Mr. A, will also be treated as a related party of A Limited, right? Because wife is covered within the definition of close family member. Another example, Mr. D is a director of H Limited. Being a member of KMP, he is related to H Limited. S Limited is a subsidiary of H Limited. So Mr. D is related to S Limited also, because KMP of the parent is a related party to the subsidiaries, right? So if H Limited has suppose multiple subsidiaries, S1, S2, S3 or S4, then Mr. D will be related party to S1 as well, S2 as well, S3 as well, and S4 as well, because he is a KMP of H Limited, right? So KMP of the holding company will be treated as a related party to all of its subsidiaries, right? Whether A Limited and B Limited are related to each other. So Mr. X as a domestic partner, MSY, okay? Now, Mr. X has investment in entity A, and domestic partner has investment in entity B, right? So can we say that entity A and entity B are related to each other? No, because Mr. has X has significant influence over entity A. Miss Y can have a significant influence on Mr. X and vice versa, right? And Miss Y has investment in entity B, right? Or significant influence, right? So basis on significant influences only, we cannot say that entity A and entity B are related parties. Okay, significant influences does not lead to direct or indirect control between A limited and B limited. If Mrs. X has significant influence but not control or joint control over entity A, and Miss Y has significant influence but not control or joint control over entity B, then entity A and entity B are not related to each other. So let's get back to the definition. So we have said here that person and his close family member will be treated as a related party to the reporting entity if either they have control or joint control or significant influence or KMP, right? So either they have control or they have joint control or they have significant influence or they are KMP. So that person will be treated as a related party. Now here in this case, in this example, Mr. X will be treated as a related party to entity A, yes or no? Yes. Related party. Yes. Miss Y for entity B will be treated as a related party, yes or no? Yes. Because both have significant influences over these respective entities. So yes, as a related party, right? Now, entity A and entity B cannot be treated as a related parties to each other, right? Although Mr. X is a related party for entity A, Mrs. Y is a related party of entity B, and they are domestic partners, but still entity A and entity B is lacking any sort of controls, right? That's why they are not related parties. We will, discuss all these relationships in further detail. So there are certain clauses given by the standard for covering, all the types of relationships which needs to be treated as a related party. We will discuss all these clauses one by one with the examples, and thereafter we will do some, comprehensive questions or examples so that our understanding about the related party relationships gets crystallized. Okay. So we will touch upon all these clauses one by one. I'm not sure what is the time. It's okay. We have a lot of time for the break. Okay. So first clause is the entity and the reporting entity, RE. Okay. Are members of the same group, which means that each parent, subsidiary, and fellow subsidiary is related to each other. So this is H limited. Okay. It has two subsidiaries, as A limited and SB limited. Okay. So ये subsidiaries हैं. SA limited and SB limited and H limited are all related parties to each other. So H limited is a related party with SA limited, RP, yes, and SA limited. So for in the financial statements of SA limited, H limited will be related party, yes. Similarly, in the financial statements of H limited, SB limited will be related party, yes. In the financial statements of SB limited, H limited will be related party, yes. In the financial statements of SA limited, SB limited is related party, yes. And in the financial statements of SB limited, SA limited is a related party, yes or no? Yes. So what is the rule coming up out of this chart? Within the group, holding companies, subsidiary companies, and fellow subsidiary companies all are related to each other. Okay. So for H Limited, both are related parties. For SA Limited, both are related parties. For SB Limited as well, both are related parties. Right? So this is a complete pack of related parties uh, among these three entities. Any question on this? So we will discuss all the relationships one by one, and then we will do a comprehensive questions. Any doubts on this? This is the easiest one. Okay, let's see the next. One entity is an associate or JV of the another entity, or an associate or JV of the member of the group of which the other entity is the member. Again, let's draw the chart. H Limited is the holding company. S1 is the subsidiary. S2 is the subsidiary of H Limited, right? Now, S1 has associate AS. Okay. Subsidiary. Okay. And S2 Limited is another subsidiary of Limited. AS Limited and S2 Limited are related parties. So AS Limited and S2 Limited are related parties. Now, let's try to find out who all are related in this case to each other. H Limited is related to S Limited, yes or no? Yes, related party because holding subsidiary. S Limited is related to H Limited, yes or no? Yes, related party because parent company is a related party. So as per clause A, this relationship is covered, right? So this relationship is covered as per clause A. Similarly, RP and RP, right? So these relationships are also covered by clause A. Clause A, right? Now, S1 Limited to S3 Limited and S2 Limited to S1 Limited, yes or no? Yes. Again, clause A, right? Now, clause B, apart from clause A relationships, clause B is saying that associate of any subsidiary will be a related party. The subsidiary itself, yes or no? Yes, related party. To the other fellow subsidiary, yes or no? Yes, related party. And to the holding company, yes or no? Yes, it is a related party. Okay. So associates of any subsidiary will be regarded as a related party for that company to which it is an associate, for other subsidiaries within the same group, and the parent company, right? So associate companies will be treated as a related party for the subsidiary company, fellow subsidiary companies, and the parent company, right? Same thing applies to the joint venture. Suppose if S2 Limited has any JV1 here. So same thing applies to here. So this JV will be related party to S Limited, will be related party to S1 Limited, will be related parties to H Limited, and will be related parties to this associate as well. Clear? And this associate will also be a related party to this JVS. Clear? So whatever charts I am drawing here for the discussion, you can, replicate the same drawing in your notes for your future reference. Clause C. Both entities are joint ventures of the same third party. Now here, H Limited has two joint ventures. So JHA is a joint venture, okay, with A Limited. So A Limited and H Limited are having this joint venture, okay, and JHB Limited This is happening with B Limited. Okay. So B Limited and H Limited are having this JV together, and H Limited and A Limited are having this joint venture together. Now, clause says both entities are joint ventures of the same third party. So JHA will be related to H Limited, yes or no? RP. JHB will be related to H Limited, yes or no? RP. H Limited will be related to JHB, yes, RP. H Limited will be related to JHA, yes, RP. JHA will be related to A Limited, yes, RP. A Limited will be related to JHA, yes, RP. Same applies here. B Limited, JHB, yes, RP. JHB Limited to B Limited, yes, RP. Right? Now the question comes whether H Limited and A Limited are related party. Yes or no? Who will answer? Yes or no? Just type in the chat box. What do you think? I'm waiting for your response. So Yukta is saying yes. Mansha is saying yes. Okay. Others? Speak quick. So Paul is also saying yes. Tanisha is also saying yes. Okay. So this will not be a related party. Okay. Simply because these two entities have entered into a joint venture. So this does not, entitle these two parties as related parties. Okay. Similarly, H Limited and B Limited will not be related parties. Okay. Similarly, B Limited and A Limited will also not be related parties. Okay. So these are related parties, these are related parties, but H Limited will not be related to A Limited as well as B Limited and vice versa. Okay. Because clause does not say that. Clause only says that both the entities are joint ventures of the same third party, then they will be related. Right. So this is a related party. So this JV will be related to this JV? Yes. And this JV to this JV will be related? Sorry. Yes, yes. Clear? Any question on this? So we will stick to the clause. What the clause is saying is a related party, nothing else. Right? So India's literature is as good as bare act. So while we study the law, corporate law or any other law, FEMA law, etc., we are very sticking to the words given in the law. But while we study the Indias, we just don't have that mindset. So please have that mindset. Whatever is written is covered. Rest everything is out of the scope. Okay. Let's move to the category D. One entity is a joint venture of the third entity and the other entity is an associate of the third entity. Okay. Again, this is H Limited. So I hope you are drawing these charts, right? Whatever we are discussing here, so that it will give you a quick revision in future. So H Limited has a JV, JH Limited. Okay. And H Limited has an associate as well, AH Limited. Okay. Now, clause says one entity is a joint venture, one entity is a joint venture, another entity is an associate, another entity is an associate of the third party area, hamari, right? Now, we need to see who all are related to whom. First, H limited to JL limited. Yes, J joint venture to uh, H limited. Yes, H limited to the associate. Yes, associate to H limited. Yes, right? Now, JHO limited to AH limited and AH limited to JHO limited. Yes, and yes. Clear? Any question on this? So Mohammed is saying India's 21 half plus did not happen. So that has been recorded and shared. The recording has must have been shared the next day. You must have, all have received that recording. The remaining portion. Okay, tell me if this clause is clear. Okay, thanks, Shruti. Next clause. The entity is a post-employment benefit plan for the benefit of employees of either the reporting entity or an entity related to the reporting entity. If the reporting entity is itself such a plan, the sponsoring employers are also related to the reporting entity. So this is nothing but all the post-employment benefit plans, right? Post-employment benefits, which all benefits? Gratuity, right? So gratuity trust, okay, and pension trust, pension plans. Okay, so sometimes you must have seen that a lot of companies have their in-house, gratuity trust as well as the pension plans or trust separately set up. So all these are considered as related parties under Ind AS. It was not covered under AS 18. Okay, so they were not treated as related parties under IGAP, but now under Ind AS they are specifically covered. So all the transactions with these trust and pension trusts during the year will be covered. And if these trusts are set up centrally and various companies in the group like holding subsidiary and subsidiary all are giving or depositing contributions to these trusts during the lifetime, so all these parties will be treated as a related party to this, right? So in sponsoring employers, here the word is used, in sponsoring employers are also related parties. Okay. Next, entity is controlled or jointly controlled by a person identified in section 1 above. So in section 1 we have studied in individual case, yes or no? So that individual now we are talking about. If Mr. A controls A limited, Mr. A controls A limited, say 55% stake, okay, so it has the control, yes, okay. And Mr. A also controls B limited. Suppose it has here 70% stake. Then whether Mr. A will be related party to A limited, yes or no? So for A limited financial statements, Mr. A will be a related party, yes or no? Yes. Now, whether we need to check for Mr. A? No, because we are not applying on Ind AS on individual, right? So for A limited financial statements, Mr. A will be a related party. For B limited financial statements, Mr. A will be a related party, right? यहाँ तक तो ठीक है. Now, whether A limited and B limited in their respective financials will treat the other entity as a related party, yes or no? That's the question here. So answer is yes. Because Mr. A is a common control having on A limited as well as B limited. So both the entities are controlled by A limited. So A limited books, B limited will be related party, and in B limited books, A limited will be related party. So that is what this clause is saying. So if any entity is controlled or jointly controlled by a same person, then those entities will be related parties. A person identified in 1A above has a significant influence over the entity or is a KMP of the entity or of the parent of the entity. Now, again, Mr. A controls the A limited. Okay, ये हमारी रिपोर्टिंग एंटिटी है. This is our reporting entity for which we will be checking. Now, Mr. A is a non-executive director in B limited. So here is a B limited, and here he holds 55% stake. So control exists. Okay, and here he is a director only. Okay, because he's a KMP of B limited, KMP of B limited. Now, question is for A limited, Mr. A is a related party, yes or no? Yes. For B limited, Mr. A is a related party, yes or no? Yes. यहाँ तक तो कोई दिक्कत ही नहीं है. Now the question comes for A limited. B limited is a related party, yes or no? And for B limited, A limited is a related party, yes or no? So answer is yes. By virtue of this clause. So this clause says if any person, that is Mr. A, has a control on one entity and does SI, significant influence, or the KMP on the another entity, then those entities will be treated as a related parties to each other. Okay. Clear? Concept is clear? Okay, so Shruti is also asking that recording is not available. So that recording has been separately uploaded. So the live session recorded because it didn't work out on that day. So that is not there. Of course, that is blank. But you need to just check. There is a separate recording uploaded. If it is not, you can just speak to the spoken ICAI, or I will also be after the session tell them. Okay, let's focus on this standard today. So, is this clause clear? Please reply to me, because this is a fundamental base of the standard. So if we are not clear about the relationships, then no use of this standard for us. So we should be very clear about which relationship is a related party. Okay. Then next clause is the entity or any member of the group of which it is a part provides KMP services, personal services to the reporting entity or to the parent of the reporting entity. Now, A limited is a parent company. It has three subsidiaries. Okay. B, C, and D. So all these are subsidiaries. Subsidiary, subsidiary, subsidiary. Okay. It also has an associate company, E Limited. Okay. This is an associate. Now, uh, subsidiary F Limited of E Limited. So this associate has a subsidiary. Okay. F Limited of E Limited provides KMP services to A Limited. So this company is providing KMP services, KMP personal services to A Limited. F Limited is in the related party relationship with A, B, C, D, and E. So because by virtue of this clause, if this clause was not there, then this wouldn't be treated as a related party, because this clause is specifically saying that if any member of the group provides KMP to the reporting entity or the parent of the reporting entity, then that company will be related. So now, F Limited will be related to A Limited, yes or no? Yes, related party. And vice versa, yes. Now, F Limited will be related to B, C, D, and E. So B subsidiary, C subsidiary, and D subsidiary, yes, because it is providing the KMP services to the parent, and A Limited is the parent company for all these subsidiaries, right? So it is related to the parent, hence it is related to subsidiaries C, D, and E as well, and vice versa. And because F Limited is anyway subsidiary of E Limited, so by default it is a related party to each other, right? Clear? Okay. What would be the scenario if instead of providing KMP services to A Limited, F Limited was providing the KMP services to any of the subsidiary, for example, D Limited? Again, the same answer, because it says provides KMP services to the reporting entity or to the parent of the reporting entity, right? So, uh, any member of the group, any any member of the group provides KMP services either to the reporting entity or to the parent of the reporting entity. So if the reporting entity is D and it is providing services to D, then they will be related. If it is not providing the services to D, but it is providing services to the parent of the D, then again they are also covered. They will be related, right? Clear? Please confirm, because these individual clauses are important. When there would be a comprehensive question, we need to apply all these clauses together, right, to find out whether a particular party is a related party or not. So 3 clauses in the section 1 and 8 clauses in the section 2. 11, all in all 11 clauses needs to be applied, together. Okay, let's do this question now. This will test what we have learned. R Limited is an associate of B Limited, and B Limited is a subsidiary of S Limited, a joint venture J Limited, and an associate A Limited. R Limited is the reporting entity. Identify the related parties for the R Limited. Let me draw the chart. So here R Limited, which is our reporting entity. Reporting entity. For R Limited's financial statements, we are trying to figure out which all R parties are related parties. So R Limited has an associate B Limited. Okay. So this is an associate. Okay. B Limited has a subsidiary, S Limited. So B Limited has a subsidiary, S Limited. Okay, subsidiary. Now, S Limited and a joint venture, J Limited. So B Limited also has a joint venture, J Limited. Okay, and an associate as well, A Limited. Okay. Okay. Now, from the perspective of R Limited financial statements, identify the related parties. Would you like to try? So A, B, J, and S. Just simply type which all you consider out of these four. So out of these four, which all are related parties as per you? Just tell me. Okay. Tanisha is saying B Limited, S Limited are related. Okay. B and S. Okay. So A and J, you are saying are not related to R Limited. Others? Just try to respond quickly. So Manoj is saying all are related parties. Okay. Mansha is saying B and S. B and S are related parties. Okay. So R Limited has B Limited and S Limited as its related parties. Right. So associate and the subsidiary of the associate will be related parties for R Limited. J Limited and A Limited are not related parties of R Limited because J Limited is neither the control of R Limited nor the joint control of R Limited, right? And nor the significant influence. So neither SI is there nor joint control is there and control is also not there, right? So JVs are not related. So associates JVs are not related. And same goes for associates. So associates are not covered and associates JVs are not covered. But associates subsidiary will be covered, right? So associates is not covered, associates JVs is not covered, right? Associate is covered and associates subsidiary is covered. Clear? So whatever we have discussed, all the clauses, this is the summary slide for your quick revision. So this is the case one, and where we talked about the person, and this is the case two, where we talked about the entities. So person who has the control, joint control, who has the significant influence, or who is a KMP, right? These are the three things we are talking about, 1, 2, and 3, right? And KMP of the reporting entity as well as KMP of the parent that we have already discussed. So this is the section 1 where we have talked about identifying the individuals who are related parties And the section 2, we have talked about just all these clauses where we have covered all the relationships with the entities, right? So all these clauses are just, replicated here, which we have just discussed with examples for your quick revision in one page. Okay. Now, parent is P, subsidiary S1, associate A1, and joint control J1. Okay. So subsidiary is related? Yes, it is a related party because it is a direct control. Associate because it is a significant influence, so related party, and JC because it is a joint control. So it is a related party to the P, right? So this is crystal clear. We have already understood this. Indirect control example. So parent P has a subsidiary, associate, and associate 2, right? Subsidiary has a step down subsidiary as well, S2. So S2 is related, yes, because it is having a indirect control, right? Because parents subsidiary is also a related party with because it is a subsidiary of subsidiary, right? And parents associate is a related party, yes, it is a related party. But associate A1 and subsidiary S1 are related to each other, yes, because here it is a control and here it is a SI. So both are related. So A1 is a related party to S1, right? And vice versa because of indirect control, right? And parent associate 2 here is related to this, yes or no? No, this is not related. Why? Because here is SI and here is also SI, right? So nowhere parent has control. So associates are not related to each other. Clear? Is this clear? Okay. So it is saying it's take time. Okay. Let me see. You want to do this question after the break or before the break? I have some few quick questions. I think we can finish so that we can start fresh with the other topic after the break, if that helpful. Because now we have just discussed the clauses, it would be, easier to pick up the questions and crystallize the concept, right? So I will take 10 minutes more. I will give you the break at after 10 to 12, 15 minutes. Okay. Let's try our hands on this question. Examine related party relationships of various entities. So this is the structure. P is the holding company, ultimate holding company, has a subsidiary, SA and SB, has associates A1 and A2, and subsidiary has a subsidiary SC, and SC has an associate A3. Now, you need to tell which all parties are related to which all parties. So the entire related party relationship structure you need to form. Now you just try your hands on this question, at least try. So how you need to do? So you need to start with P. So for P, which all related party? For SA, which all parties are related? For SB, which all parties are related? For A1, which all parties are related? For A2, which all parties are related? For SC, which all parties are related? For A3, which all parties are related? So simply just prepare this table, and here you can write like SA, SB like this. Okay. And once you are done, I'm just waiting for a couple of minutes. Once you are done, we will discuss, and then you can match if your solution is correct. And this single question will, apply all the clauses we have studied so far. So your time starts now. We will discuss the solution after a couple of minutes. Once you are done. Okay. Anybody wants to answer for P Limited, which all are related parties for P Limited first? Okay, Tanisha has answered all. Okay, for P S S B A1 A2 for S A P and S B S C for S B P S A S C for A1 P A2 for A2 P for A1 SE and A3. Okay, well tried. Just match your answer with the solution. So we will discuss the solution now. So for P, SA Limited, SB Limited, SC Limited, A1 Limited, and A2 Limited, and A3 Limited are all the related parties, right? So this will be related, this will be related, this will be related, this will be related. No doubt about that. And SC Limited will also be related, right? Because it is A3, and A3 Limited will also be related because it is an associate of the subsidiary, right? So all are related parties, correct? For P Limited. So every entity is a related party, sorry, right? For the individual financial statements of SA Limited, that is one of the subsidiaries. So P Limited will anyway be a related because it is a parent company, fellow subsidiary, associate within the group, and associate of a fellow subsidiary, right? Clear? Similarly for SB, P Limited parent, fellow subsidiary, associate of the group, and associate of the subsidiary. Similarly for SC Limited, parent, fellow subsidiary, associate of the group, and associate of the fellow subsidiary. Clear? Or rather, its own subsidiary. I think A3 was SB. Okay. Then, individual financial statements of A1, A2, and A3 Limited, because it will be all same. So P Limited, the parent company, and all the subsidiary companies are the related parties. And for parents, consolidated financial statements, associate 1, associate 2, and associate 3 are related. Now, who will tell me that for consolidated financial statements, why subsidiary companies are not considered as related parties? Because I mentioned in the beginning of the session that when we prepare the consolidated financial statement, so all the subsidiaries are getting consolidated. All the transactions with those subsidiaries and balances with those subsidiaries are eliminated in the consolidated financial statements. Hence, this will represent the parent as well as its subsidiary as a single entity. Hence, subsidiaries are not considered as related parties in the consolidated financial statements. That's why for consolidated financial statements of P, only associates are considered as a related party and only disclosures for associates be made. Right now, A1, A2, and A3 are not related to each other. Right. For A1, A2 and A3 are not related. For A1 and A3 are not related. For A3, A1 and A2 are not related. Because associate to associate are not covered in the related party definition. Clear? So, I hope many of you must have reached at least, 70%, 80% of the correct answer. And where you have missed any related party identification, or you might end up identifying any related party as a related party which actually is not, just mark them and immediately put a reason that what is the reason for this mistake, so that it will be helpful for you in future. So whenever we learn from our mistakes, we never repeat them, right? So there are quick small quizzes. We will finish these 3-4 questions quickly, and then we will have a break. And then we will start with the next concept. Now, the question is whether A limited is related to the C limited. Just simply you type in the box as related, not related, whatever. So whenever you say RP in the chat box. Whenever you say not an RP, say NRP in the chat box. So I get to know your answer. So chart is already there. You need to identify whether A limited is related to C limited. Yes or no. So Tanisha is saying related. Okay, Shruti is saying that please repeat why associates are not covered as an related party. Okay, after doing all these questions, 3-4 questions, I will speak on associates in detail further. Just hold on for a couple of minutes. So Manoj is saying yes, Manisha is saying yes. Okay. So yes, A limited and is related to C limited because Mixer X controls A limited and is a member of KMP of C limited, right? So on one side it has control, on another side it is a KMP. So A limited and C limited are related to each other, right? What if the scenario is turned to this? Whether A limited is related to C limited now. So whenever you do the revision of this standard, just try to pick up and draw charts yourself, okay, and then mark related party yes or no, and also the reason why it is a related, so that it gets crystallizes in your mind and it will be easier for you in the examination. Okay, so Mohammed is saying related party. Sorry, Mohammed is saying not a related party. Tanisha is saying related party. So answer is A limited is related to C limited because Mr. X controls A limited and is a KMP of the parent. So you must remember the clause when I said that either it is a KMP of the reporting entity itself or it is a KMP of the parent of the reporting entity, right? So both are covered. So KMP of the parent is also covered, right? And by virtue of that, A limited is related to the C limited. Clear? because this is a KMP in B Limited and B Limited is a parent, right, of C Limited. So by virtue of KMP of the parent, you know, A Limited is also related to C Limited because here it has control, right? Okay. This one. So question is same, only the chart is or relationships pattern is, changing. Please answer this one. So Manoj is saying yes. Tanisha is also saying related party. Okay. Yes, it is a related party because either the control or the joint control both works, right? So here it is a joint control and here it is a KMP, right? This case, Mohammed is now saying not a related party. Okay. Others, please respond quickly. As early you respond, as early I will announce you. So Mansha is also saying no. Manoj is saying yes. Okay. So A Limited is not controlled by X. Now here control is missing. Okay. Because significant influence does not mean control. Right. Right. And here he is having a KMP only. Here also he does not have any control. Right. So will not be considered as related party of C Limited. So because control is missing here and here he is a KMP only. So with a KMP along with a combination of SI, does not give a related party relationship. Okay. So that's all from my side before the break. And we will cover which all parties are excluded specifically by the standard from being a related party. That is the next concept. We will start after the break. Now it's 8:43. So we will start in how much? 10 minutes? 8:53. We will start. Please be back in time. I'm giving 10 minutes break, although the session is, very comprehensive. So please come back on time. So Ashok, please start the break. Thanks. So break is over. I'm resuming. At least one or two people, if can quickly confirm in the chat box. Are you guys back? Thanks, Abdul, for the confirmation. Okay, so I think before the break, Shruti has asked just to repeat the concept of the associate. So let me quickly spend a minute on that. So, for example, this is A Limited, okay, and it has a subsidiary S1 Limited, okay, JV, JV1 Limited, and associate A1 Limited, okay. Now, subsidiaries and JVs are related to each other, yes or no? Yes. So both ways are related. JVs and associates are related to each other both ways, yes. Associates and subsidiaries are related to each other both ways, yes. And of course, all the parties are related to holding company both ways, to and fro, yes. Okay. Now, if there is one more associate, say A2, okay, whether this associate will be related to the associate 1, yes or no? No, right? Because here there is a control, here it is a joint control, and here it is a significant influence. So either the control plus SI or the joint control plus SI, entitles all these relationships. But if A Limited has a SI here and SI here, so SI with SI is not, related. Okay. So this is the crux of the story. So associate will not be related to the associate. Associate will be related to the subsidiary and vice versa. Associate will be related to the joint venture and vice versa. But associate with associate, there wouldn't be any relationship, right? Okay. Now we will move on to the section 3, understanding who are not related parties. So again, there are certain clauses in the standard given, so which we will study one by one along with the examples. Two entities are not related parties simply because they have a director or any other KMP in common, or because a member of the KMP personnel of one of the entity has significant influence over the other entity, right? So what it is saying, suppose Mr. X is a KMP in A Limited, okay? Mr. X has a significant influence over B Limited, then A Limited and B Limited are not related parties, correct, to each other, because neither control sits here nor control or joint control sits here. So KMP and SI, will not lead to a related party relationship between the A Limited and B Limited. Okay. Now, Y Limited, let's do an example. Y Limited purchases the entire production of X Limited. Okay. The transactions are always at arm's length. Okay. And Mr. A is a director in X Limited. So Mr. A is a director in X Limited. Okay. So director means KMP basically. So I am writing here as KMP. And what it is saying, he is also a director in Y Limited. So he is also a KMP. Okay. In Y Limited. Now, whether because of Mr. A having a common KMP of X Limited and Y Limited, whether X Limited and Y Limited are related to each other? No, right? So they are not related to each other. Now, the tweak in the case is Y Limited purchases the entire production of X. So this Y Limited purchases the entire production of X Limited. That is 100%, sales by X Limited are made to Y Limited only. So Y Limited is the only customer of X Limited. Now, would your answer be different because of this? Now, standard says X Limited and Y Limited may be related parties. May be related parties, as it is quite possible that Y Limited may be able to exercise control or significant control over X Limited by virtue of being the sole customer of the entity. Because if Y Limited tomorrow says that I will buy the material from somebody else and will not buy from you, that is X Limited, then X Limited, will not have any customer because it is completely dependent on Y Limited only, right? So as per this standard, substance is more important than the mere legal form. Further information and analysis is required here to conclude by virtue of the transaction only it cannot be said that they are related parties. So although standard does not explicitly talks about that if any company is doing a significant transaction as a purchaser, customer or supplier for the another entity, then it will be regarded as a related party. But we need to further investigate into the facts and circumstances of the case. And if we are able to see that Y Limited is actually taking up all the major decisions for X Limited, if that is the fact coming out of those further analysis, then certainly we can conclude that yes, Y is having a control over X Limited by virtue of being the sole customer of the X Limited, as X Limited is completely dependent on Y Limited for all its business operations, right? So standard here does not say that these will be related parties by virtue of these significant voluminous transactions between the two entities, but standard says we need to give more weight to the substance rather than over form. Even if the form says that Y Limited has no shareholding or in the X Limited, or no control or joint control in X Limited, and it only has a common KMP or common director, Mr. A, who is a KMP for both the companies. But because of these significant transactions, it gives an indicator that X Limited might be acting under the governance or direction of Y Limited, because it is wholly and solely dependent on that. So that, facts, if lead to that conclusion, then we will treat these parties as a related parties, otherwise not. Clear? Please tell me, clear? Any doubts? Waiting for your response. Okay, let's proceed to clause 2. Two venturers are not related parties simply because they share joint control over a joint venture. So J Limited and V Limited forms a joint venture JV Limited. Okay. So 50% ownership, suppose, or 50% ownership, right? So J is a owner and we limited is the owner of this joint venture, right? Now, because they have a common JV formed, it does not entitle them to be related parties to each other. Okay. So this will not be treated as a related parties with each other, right? Clear? Too simple to understand? Okay. J will be related party with JV Limited? Yes. Vice versa? Yes. Similarly, will be related party with V Limited? Yes. And vice versa? Yes. But these will not be related to each other. Okay. Clause 3. Who else will not be treated as a related party? Providers of finance. For example, banks. If I have taken the loans from the banks and those loans are significant part of my all the liabilities, then whether that bank from whom I have taken the loan or the entity has taken the loan will be treated as a related party? No. बैंक का काम ही है लोन देना और कंपनीज का काम है लोन लेना बैंक से. So simply because we have taken the finance from the banks or any other party. So bank could be an example. There could be other entities as well, right? Any other entities, right? So simply because of this taking of loan, we cannot say that that party is a related party. Or trade unions are not to be treated as a related parties. Public companies, PSUs, are not to be treated as a related parties. Departments, agencies of the government. Who are the agencies of the government? Any agencies like RBI is an entity which is governed by the government, right? So that does not jointly control or significantly influence the reporting entity. So all these parties are not to be treated as a related party, right? Clear? Example, a bank and B bank. So A bank and B bank. There are two banks has provided finance to XY Limited. By virtue of the loan agreement, they occupy the non-executive observer seat on the board of directors of XY Limited. Whether the bank A and bank B are related? No, they are not related parties because they are simply the providers of finance and they have occupied the observer seat on the board of directors as a non-executive simply to watch if the company is going to misutilize the funds or not. So they are only interested whether the funds are being utilized properly or not for the purpose they have been given or obtained by the company. Nothing else is in their authority, right? So they are not controlling or they do not have the authority or responsibility around planning, directing and controlling the affairs of the company. They are only observers. If whatever decisions are being taken will not affect the purpose for which the funds have been given to them, right? So that's the only objective. 4, a customer or a supplier or a franchisor or a distributor or an agent with whom the company entity transacts and have a significant volume of business simply by virtue of the economic dependence. So standard says simply because of this economic dependency on this customer or supplier or franchisor or distributor or general agent, they will not be regarded as a related party, right? But we need to investigate into further facts and circumstances. And if we are able to draw the conclusions and see that those customer, supplier, franchisor, distributor or agents are actually governing the company or whatever they say company has to follow, then in that case, because there is evidence that these parties are controlling these entities, then in that case we can say that they are related parties. Otherwise, simply by virtue of this significant volume of business or transactions, it cannot be said they are related parties. Otherwise the avenues will open to anybody, right? So that's why standard has explicitly excluding all these parties to be the related parties, right? So that's it, I think. So these are the 4 clauses which are there in the standard. explaining which all parties will not be treated as related parties, right? So common director, by virtue of common director, it will not be related. Uh, by virtue of a JV, the JV owners will not be related. And providers of finance, trade unions, public utilities, government agencies will not be related by default. And customer, supplier, franchisor, distributor, and agents, etc., will not be related, right? Let's do an example quick. A limited is an auto ancillary of an automobile company. So this is an auto ancillary. Auto ancillary is what? Which provides certain, key parts to the automobile company, so that automobile company can complete their, product. For example, Maruti might be, procuring lots of, auto ancillary parts from various, companies. For example, steering from somebody, seats from somebody, engine from somebody, and then Maruti, actually assembles and, manufactures the car. So all these auto ancillary suppliers, will be regarded as a related party to the Maruti? No. So because they are simple suppliers of the raw material, right? So they cannot be treated as a related parties by default. So this is a quick bird's eye view on this not a related party discussion, which we have just made for your quick revision. So instead of going to many slides, you can simply, refer to this slide, and everything is available here for quick revision. Any questions, doubts, or if it is clear, just let me know so that I can proceed with the section 4. And now we have understood who all are related parties. We have also understood who all are not related parties. Now we will see what sort of related party transactions are there which we need to disclose in the financial statements. I'm waiting for your response in the chat box quickly. The more time you take in responding in the chat box will eventually lead, extra time being taken by me in completing the session. So please try to be responsive. Okay. Abdullah said clear. Not sure about others. Okay. Now, what is the definition of related party transaction? RPT, related party transaction. So we have understood the definition of related parties. Now we will understand the definition of related party transaction as well. Okay. A related party transaction is a transfer of resources, services, or obligations between a reporting entity, that is the entity for which we are preparing the financial statements, and its related party, RP, right, which we have identified, right? So either the transaction may be because of transfer of resources like sale, purchase of goods and services, right? Or we have provided any other services, for example, KMP services, and we are, taking compensation as well for that, or any obligations, for example, any commitments, oblique financial guarantees. Okay. Regardless of whether the price is charged or not. So if holding company and subsidiary company are not charging any price or charging any nominal price for any of the transactions, so it does not impact our disclosure, right? So whether the price is actually charged by these reporting entities with the related parties or not, that is not important, right? Okay. What are the few examples of the related party transactions? For example, purchase and sale of goods, finished or unfinished or raw material, purchase and sale of property, plant and equipment or any other assets, furniture, computers, etc. Rendering or receiving of any services, professional services, legal services, auditing services, internal audit services, advisory services, whatever. Leases, if we have entered into any lease agreement by giving certain assets to the related party on the lease, or we have taken any assets on the lease from them. Transfer of any research or development. Suppose any pharma company was doing some research on a particular drug. Now it has given that formula to the subsidiary or any other related party, or received from them, vice versa. Transfers of any licensing agreements, transfer under financing arrangements. For example, giving loans, taking loans, investing in equity shares, taking investments from them in cash or in kind, or provisions for any guarantees, financial guarantees, which generally holding company gives to the providers of finance for the subsidiary, that if subsidiary defaults, I will be, paying up to you. So these are called financial guarantees. Or any collaterals, if we have, uh, marked as lien for any of the borrowings of our related parties. Then commitments to do something if a particular event occurs or does not occur in the future. So some future event, dependency, contingency, or commitments which we have entered into an agreement with our related parties. Settlement of any liabilities on behalf of our related parties, or management contracts including deputation of employees. So this is not a exhaustive list. This is a suggestive list. Okay. So it does not mean that if any transaction is not falling into these lists, that will be out of the scope. So what the conclusion is? Conclusion is any sort of transaction happening between the reporting entity and the related party will required to be disclosed, irrespective of the fact what is the nature of the transaction, right? So these are certain examples only, right? But we have to ensure that whatever transactions we are doing with our related parties needs to be disclosed. So related party transaction means the transactions between the related parties. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Clear? Try to be responsive, please, in the chat box. Thank you, Shruti and Abdul, for the confirmation. Okay. Now we will proceed to the main part of the standard, that is the disclosures. What are the disclosures which we need to make? Because only for this, whatever we have been studying since morning is only for this purpose, right? So this standard is a disclosure standard only, right? This standard asks us to disclose all the related party transactions. Now, because we need to disclose the related party transactions, we have to identify first which all parties are related parties, right? So that discussion we have done. We have done numerous practicals around that so that we are clear about the relationships. Now, once we have identified who all are our related parties, then the next step is identify all the transactions which we have done with them during the year and the outstanding balances as on the date. And then we will start disclosing all those transactions and those outstanding balances in our financial statements, right? Now, these disclosures are divided into two categories, category 1 and category 2. So category 1 disclosure says that it requires disclosures of the relationships, not the transactions. So if any party is my related party, I have to disclose that, irrespective of the fact whether there is a transaction or not. Whether there is transaction or not. Right? So transaction is there or transaction is not there, doesn't matter. I have to disclose the name of the related party and the nature of relationship I have with them. So, for example, holding company in its standalone financial statements will disclose the list of all its subsidiaries, JVs, and associates, irrespective of the fact whether they have the transaction with them or not, right? Because that is a mandatory disclosure under category 1, right? Category 2 requires disclosures of relationships and the transactions. So relationships as well as transactions. Here only relationships only, because there are no transactions. Only when there are transactions with those related parties. So if I have the related parties and I have the transactions as well with them, then only I will disclose both the related party relationship, that is the nature of relationship, and the name of the party, and the transactions with them, and the balances, outstanding balances, right? So there are certain category of related parties which will fall in the category 1, and others will, you know, will fall eventually in the category 2. Now we need to discuss these one by one. So category 1 disclosures. What the standard says, disclose the name of its parent company. Whether you have the transaction with your holding company or not, you need to disclose the name of your holding company. And if different, the ultimate controlling party. So it may be noted that ultimate controlling party may be a person. For example, S4 is a reporting entity. So S4 is a reporting entity for our purpose. Okay, reporting entity means the entity for which we are preparing the financial statements. Now it has a subsidiary S3. Okay, S3 Limited is a subsidiary of S2 Limited. Oh, sorry. S4 is a subsidiary of S3. Okay. So this is a parent company. Okay. This is a reporting entity, and S3 is a subsidiary of S2. Sorry, is a subsidiary of S4 is a subsidiary of S3. S4 is a subsidiary of S3, and S3 is a subsidiary of S2. Okay. So S2 is a parent of S3, right? Now, S2 is a subsidiary of S1. Again, S2 is a subsidiary of S1. Okay. So S1 is the ultimate parent company. It has a subsidiary S2, it has a subsidiary S3, and it has a subsidiary S4, right? Now, S1 is a subsidiary of H Limited. So S1 also is a subsidiary of H Limited, which is the ultimate parent company. Okay, H Limited. So this is ultimate parent, UP, ultimate parent company of the group, right? Now, S4 Limited, S3 Limited, S2 Limited, and S1 Limited must disclose the name and the relationship with the S3 Limited, S2 Limited, S1 Limited respectively, and with the H Limited. Now, we are working for this entity, right? We are preparing the financial statements for S4. Now, by virtue of category 1 disclosures, what we need to disclose in the balance sheet of S4. So, in the balance sheet of S4, we will say that S3 is the parent company of S4, and S2 and S1 are the parent intermediary parent companies, and the ultimate parent company is H Limited. So we will disclose all these companies in the as a related parties in the balance sheet of the S4, irrespective of the fact whether the S4 is having any transactions with all these companies or not during the year, right? So category 1 disclosure means disclose the relationships irrespective of the fact there are transactions or no transactions. Clear? So we need to disclose all our, parent companies. Now, if neither the entity's parent nor the ultimate controlling party produces consolidated financial statements available for public use. The name and of the next most senior parent that does so shall also be disclosed. Now, in the same example, what happens if suppose entity's parent company, who was the parent company? So S3 was the parent company for S4, right? Because we are preparing the financial statements of S4. So S3 was the parent company. So S3 does not produce consolidated financial statements, right? Does not produce. Then what we need to do? So we will tell which next senior parent is producing. Suppose if S2 is producing, we will say S2 is producing. If S2 is also not producing, we will say S1. If S1 is producing, we will say S1 is producing. Otherwise, H Limited eventually will be producing because that is the ultimate parent. So that disclosure is required. So S Limited, S4 Limited, that is the reporting entity, is a subsidiary of S3, and S3 is a subsidiary of S2, and S2 is a subsidiary of S1, right? And S1 is a subsidiary of H. So here is the chart: H, S1, S2, and S3, and S4, right? And we are preparing the financial statements of S4, right? Now, if only S2 and S1 produces CFS, consolidated financial statements. So only S2 produces CFS and S1 produces CFS, right? But S3 is not producing CFS. Then what we will say, in the balance sheet of S4, we will disclose the name and the relationship with the S3, S2, S1, and H anyway, right? And we will say that S2 is producing the consolidated financial statements. So that fact we need to state. Now, another scenario: S3 Limited, S2 Limited, and S1 Limited, and H Limited all are producing the consolidated financial statements. So here, S3, S2, S1, and H, all the four are producing CFS, their respective CFS, right? Then what will happen? S4 Limited must disclose the name and relationship with S3 Limited and H Limited. In that case, S3 Limited, because it is preparing CFS, right? So we will say S3 Limited is our holding company and H Limited is the ultimate holding company. And because S1 and S2 are not required to be disclosed here, because anyway S3 is preparing the CFS. So we will skip on S2 and S1 in this case. So I repeat the entire concept again. So whenever in any group, there are multiple step down subsidiaries, right? So this standard requires disclosure of category 1 disclosures for all those relationships which they have within that group, right? Whether there are transactions or no transactions. Now, which all relationships needs to be disclosed? Disclose the name of its parent. So this disclosure is applicable for parent. So we have to disclose the name of the parent. Now, if our parent is not producing CFS, in the next discussion we have seen that, then we need to state which other intermediary parent is disclosing that CFS, right? So that we will say. And if our parent is preparing the CFS, then we will skip on S3 and S4, and we will directly go to the ultimate parent, that is H Limited. So we will say our parent company and the ultimate parent company is our related party, right? Because those are producing the consolidated financial statements. So that is a requirement of the standard. Now, disclose relationships between the parent and its all subsidiaries, right? So suppose in our previous example, H has a S1, S1 has S2, S2 has S3, and S3 has S4, right? And we were preparing the financial statements of S4. Since S4 does not have any more subsidiaries, so let's see if we prepare the financial statements of S1. Okay. So in this case, who all are regarded as subsidiaries? So S2 is a direct subsidiaries for S1. So it is a direct subsidiary and it is a step down subsidiary, right? Now, the standard says all subsidiaries needs to be disclosed, irrespective of the fact whether there are transactions or not. So while preparing the financial statements of S1, what I will do, I will disclose the name of the S2 as my subsidiary, S3 as my subsidiary, S4 as my subsidiary, because step down subsidiaries are also subsidiaries, right? Similarly for H, all these will be regarded as subsidiary. S, all these will be regarded. S2, these two will be regarded. And S3, only S4 will be disclosed as subsidiaries. Because whether there are transactions or not with the subsidiary company has to be disclosed as a related parties in the financial statements by virtue of category 1 disclosure. So we will be disclosing the names of all our subsidiaries, right? It is important because the existence of control relationship may prevent the reporting entity from being independent in making its financial and operating decisions. Now, what is the objective of this category 1 disclosure? The objective of category 1 disclosure is, even if there are no transactions with your subsidiaries companies or your parent company, but still the standard is asking to disclose the name of those entities and the relationship, that is parent, ultimate parent, intermediary parent, or subsidiary, fellow subsidiary, or step down subsidiary, right? Why? Because so that users of the financial statements gets to know about the group structure. Even if there are no transactions, they will be aware of what sort of structure has been formed, right? Because in spite of the fact there are no transactions, there must be some existence of control and the relationships which may affect the decisions of these entities, right? So for that purpose, awareness is the objective, right? Awareness about the group structure. The disclosure of the name of the related party, that is entity's name, and the nature, that is holding है या subsidiary है या fellow subsidiary है या step down subsidiary है, right? So that we need to disclose. Where control exists may sometimes be at least as relevant in appraising an entity's prospects as are the operating results and the financial position presented in its financial statements. So the objective of category 1 disclosure is just to make users of the financial statements well informed about the structure of the group, which all companies are parent or ultimate parent companies, and which all companies are subsidiary, fellow subsidiary, and step down subsidiaries of the company, irrespective of the fact there are no transactions, right? So that we need to disclose. Such a related party may establish the entity's credit standing, determine the source and the price of raw materials, and determine to whom or at what price the product is sold. Because there might be, a decision making by these related parties in the, business of the entity. So that's why this disclosure is crucial, right? Any question on category 1 disclosure? So as category 1 disclosure, I can say that at least our task is relatively easy. We only need to disclose the name of the entity and the nature of relationship, and we don't need to worry whether there are transactions or not, right? If there are no transactions, even then the disclosure is required. If there are transactions, then the anyway disclosure is required, right? So category 1 disclosure is a mandatory disclosure which cannot be skipped under any circumstances. So that is a easy thing, right? Okay, so Kirti is asking, if S3 has another subsidiary S5, then S5 has to be disclosed in case of reporting entity for S4. Yes, so that's what I said now. So I need, okay, so for category 1, suppose reporting entity is this entity. So any entity above the reporting entity and any subsidiary, fellow subsidiary, or step down subsidiary of the reporting entity needs to be disclosed, right? So my subsidiaries, fellow subsidiaries, and step down subsidiaries anyway needs to be disclosed, right? And for this entity, my parent company needs to be disclosed and the ultimate parent company needs to be disclosed, right? So parent and the ultimate parent. If my parent is not preparing the consolidated financial statements, then the immediate next senior parent, which is preparing the consolidated financial statement, that also needs to be disclosed, right? So my parent, if it is preparing CFS, I don't need to disclose all the intermediary parents. So my parent and the ultimate parent, only two will be required. If my parent is not preparing CFS, then the next most senior, if preparing CFS, that needs to be disclosed, or I will go to the ladder up till I find which intermediary parent is preparing. So that intermediary parent and the ultimate parent, right? So if I go above, my parent and ultimate parent and the intermediary parent who is preparing the CFS, if my parent is not preparing, that needs to be disclosed. If I go down, my subsidiaries and my step down subsidiaries, all needs to be disclosed. Clear? Okay. Now let's move to category 2 disclosures. Disclosure required only when there are related party transactions. So if there are no related party transactions, or if there are no transactions with those related parties, the list of these related parties even not required to be disclosed, right? Now, for example, compensation to key managerial person in total and for each category. What are the categories? Short-term employee benefits, post-employment benefits, other long-term benefits, termination benefits, and the share-based payments. So these are the 5 categories given by the standard, under which we will be disclosing all the compensation we are paying to our KMPs. So KMP compensations is required to be disclosed, right? KMP compensation. KMP compensation is required to be disclosed. And should I say that my CMD salary is, say, 5 crore, my CFO salary is, say, 3 crore, and my CS salary is, say, 2 crore. Should I say like this? No. I don't need to disclose their CTCs or other compensations for these individual categories. What I need to say, I will categorize all the compensation into these 5 categories, and then I will state that these are the total amount of paid to all these KMPs, right? So category wise disclosures I need to make, right? Instead of ending up disclosing their CTCs. Okay. So this is required to be disclosed. And if there are any other transactions with these KMPs, suppose apart from these compensations, I might have, taken some consulting service in their personal capacity, or they might have been, supplying some goods or services to me apart from their KMP compensation, for which they are raising an invoice to me, and I am, discharging those obligations. So those transactions also needs to be disclosed separately, right? So these transactions also needs to be disclosed. Other related party transactions during the year, right? Now, what else is required under category 2? Nature of the relationship. So nature of the relationship, for example, if I have a joint venture, then JV is the relationship. If I have an associate, then SIE is the relationship. Here, joint control is the relationship, right? So for JVs, joint control is the relationship. For associate, significant influence is the relationship. For KMP, right? So KMP is the relationship basically, right? And for relatives of the KMP, again, the KMP relative is the relationship. So for example, if CMD is my KMP, right? Anyway, it is a KMP, correct? then CMD's wife or CMD's close family members with whom I have entered into the transaction. For example, CMD's wife has, provided any professional services to the company for which she raised an invoice of rupees, say 1 lakh, right? So I need to disclose this, that CMD's wife is my KMP's, and uh, there is a advisory services company has received for rupees 1 lakh and the outstanding balance. Suppose if it is not yet discharged, then 1 lakh is the outstanding liability in the books of the company as on the reporting date. But only if there are transactions. So if there are no transactions, then I don't need to disclose names of all the close family members of all my KMPs or all the ABs and associates too, right? These disclosures becomes applicable only if there are transactions. Getting my point? So category 2 disclosures becomes applicable only if there are transactions. Otherwise, though, I will end up disclosing all the close family members' names of all my KMPs. So my CFOs, wife, domestic partner, children of the domestic partner, parent, dependents. Unnecessarily, I will, disclose all the family tree of all my KMPs. So I don't need to do that. So I will only be disclosing those relationships with whom the company has entered into the transaction, right? Otherwise, no. Clear? And information. And once I see that there are transactions, then what exactly needs to be disclosed? The transactions and the balances, right? So what is the nature of the transaction? What is the amount of the transaction? And what is the outstanding balance? That needs to be disclosed. Now, at minimum, disclosure will include amount of the transactions, amount outstanding balance, including commitments, if any, at the reporting date, terms and conditions of the secured and unsecured nature of considerations paid in the settlement. So if there are any, loan transactions with any of these related parties, then key terms and conditions, whether the loan is secured, unsecured, or what is the consideration paid, or what is the interest charged, or what is the frequency of the interest. So all that can be disclosed, right? Guarantees, if any, given on behalf of any related party or received from any related party, that also needs to be disclosed. ECL, expected credit loss. Suppose I have sold the goods to any of the related parties, say JV or associate or the KMP or the KMP's partnership or the KMP's relatives, right? Now I have not yet collected those balances or receivables from them. Now at the year end, because receivables are a financial asset and all financial assets, I need to create ECL, expected credit loss, that is provision for doubtful debts. In older days we talked about. So ECL amount is also required to be disclosed on all such balances receivable from the related parties. So I will say 1 lakh invoice, 1 lakh goods I have supplied to the CMD or the CFO or the close family member of these parties or the JV or associate. This 1 lakh is the transaction amount that I will disclose. Nature of transaction, sale of goods. And at the end, 1 lakh is outstanding. And the ECL thereupon is also needs to be disclosed, which I will anyway calculate applying the ECL formula or ECL model, right? Expense recognized during the period in respect of bad or doubtful debts. Or if I have written off any receivables from any of these related party transactions during the year, then that write-off amount also needs to be disclosed separately. So I will say out of the 1 lakh receivable, 10,000 is the ECL and 20,000 has already been written off. So I will say 1 lakh is outstanding. Sorry, 80,000 is outstanding and 10,000 is the ECL. So net outstanding is 70,000. 20,000 I have already written off in the books. So that needs to be disclosed. Disclosures shall be made separately for each of the following categories. So how the disclosure should look like? Should I start writing novels around these disclosures in all paras? No, I have to prepare a table. So I will be giving all these disclosures in a tabular format, which is easy to comprehend and understand what disclosures are there. So that categorization standard says has to be done basis on this: the parent company column, then JV column, then associates column, then subsidiary column, then joint ventures column, then KMP column, and then other related party column. So what I will say here, I will list down the nature of the transaction: sale of goods, sale of services, purchase of goods, purchase of services, sale of fixed assets, purchase of fixed assets, sale of intangible assets, purchase of intangible assets, whatever the nature of the transactions. Loans taken, loans given, guarantees taken, commitments given, commitments taken. So all these are the nature of transactions. And horizontally, I will say holding company, parent company, ultimate holding company, subsidiaries, JVs, associates, KMPs, close member of the KMP or other related party, right? And then I will fill up the amount of the transactions for against each nature. And this is how this matrix will be, presented for all these transactions. Similar table I will present after these transaction table for the balances outstanding with these parties, right? So I'll show up the disclosure, how it is actually made in the financial statements. And provision of KMP personal services that are provided by separate management. So if there are any, KMP services I am taking on a contractual basis from an independent entity, that also needs to be disclosed, that which that entity is giving the KMP services to me, right? So this is how the disclosures are done. So this I have taken from ITC Limited, which is a listed company, right? So here how disclosures are given. Category A, key managerial person. Now they have stated the names of their KMPs and their designations, right? And along with their dates, from which date they are, designated as a non-executive director, right? Or if somebody has left during the year, then up to which date they were the executive directors or non-executive directors, as the case may be, right? So this is how we will present the KMP listing, right? Thereafter, I will say chief financial officer, company secretary, name of the CFO, name of the company secretary, then members of the management committee. So this is the KMP committee, and these are the name of the members, right? So this is how I will be disclosing my KMPs. Then relatives of the key managerial person. For example, T. Anand, wife of A. Anand. T. Tandon, wife of R. Tandon. T. Singha, wife of R. K. Singh, right? So this is how I will present those relatives with whom I will be having the transactions. Otherwise, this wouldn't have been required, right? Then post-employment benefit plans, one of the disclosure requirement we have discussed. So we will say, what are the my provident fund, contribution, pension fund, gratuity fund, employees gratuity fund C, pension fund. So all the post-employment funds which the company has in place needs to be disclosed under employee trust category, right? Nomenclature you may choose. And this is how the transactions will be disclosed with these related parties. So this is the disclosure of the name of the related party and the relationship with them. And this is how the transactions will be disclosed. So here, what I have done, I have, listed down the nature of the transactions, right? So these are the nature of the transactions which I have entered into with different related parties. And here I have captured the related parties. So it is a subsidiaries, it is a associates, it is a JVs, it is a KMP, then relatives of the KMP, then employee trust, and then total column. So this is how the tabular presentation ITC Limited has given for all its related party transactions, right? And if anything is specific to any transaction I need to explain, then I can use the legends and the notes in the disclosure that for this transaction, suppose this is the terms and conditions. For this transaction, this is the terms and conditions. So if there are any specific information which I need to, mention about any of the transaction with any of the related party, so I can, utilize these notes by explaining them. So this is how, the related party disclosures generally look like in the financial statements. I would suggest you to download at least 5 companies, annual reports for 2023 latest for any of the 5 listed companies, and just start reading how the related party disclosures are being presented. So it will, crystallizes in your mind how the disclosures are actually made in practical life, right? So it will help you to understand that better. So that was it on the disclosure. So what we have learned on category 1 and category 2, just to summarize. So there are two types of disclosures: category 1 disclosures, category 2 disclosures. Category 1 disclosures talks about the relationship disclosure, because there might be transaction, there might not be the transaction. So relationship anyway needs to be disclosed. Which all relationships needs to be disclosed? Or parent company, ultimate parent company, and the subsidiaries company. So all these anyway needs to be listed as a related party relationships, right? Irrespective of the fact whether there are transactions or no transactions, right? Category 2 disclosures we will give only when there are transactions. So if I have a transaction with any of the close relatives, relatives of family members of any of the KMP, then only that person will be in my related party disclosure. Otherwise not. I don't need to disclose all the family details of all my KMPs if there are no transactions. So only that member with whom I have the transaction only needs to be disclosed, right? KMPs, if there are any other transactions, that needs to be disclosed. Otherwise, KMP will anyway be disclosed, because anyway we are giving a compensation to them. So by virtue of paying compensation, because there are transactions, so KMP's listing anyway needs to be disclosed, right? And this is the category by which we will be disclosing. If apart from this compensation there are any other services, that also needs to be disclosed, right? So we will not say that other services we will not disclose. Now what exactly needs to be disclosed? The nature of the relationship, and amount of the transaction, outstanding balance of the transaction on the reporting date, important terms and conditions of the transactions, if any, guarantees or commitments, if any, received or given, and ECL, expected credit loss on the receivable, and if any balances are written off during the year, those balances also needs to be disclosed, right? And disclosure has to be made according to the category of parent, subsidiary, associate, JV, like we have seen in the ITC limited disclosures here, right? So that's all on the disclosure. Now, section 6 is talking about certain exemptions given by this standard to the government related entities. So whatever we have discussed so far, that is the related party transactions and the category 1, category 2 disclosures, right? So this is all applicable on all the entities in its entirety. There is no exemptions or exceptions given in the standard, with a limited exemption given to the government related entities that we are going to talk about. But before proceeding to that, let me gather your thoughts. If you have any questions or doubts at this point in time, or if it is clear, just let me know in the chat box, please. So Kirti is saying clear. No, it's an old message. Okay. Shruti is saying it is clear. Please try to be responsive in the chat box so that I get to know that we are on the same page and nobody is, left behind, struggling with any concept understanding. I am happy to repeat, if it is required. Sister concerns means fellow subsidiary. Yes, they are related parties. So sister concern is like, for example, let me draw the chart. H Limited has S1 as a subsidiary, S2 as a subsidiary, S3 as a subsidiary. So for S1, S2, and S3 are fellow subsidiaries, right? This is called sister concerns. Okay. Okay. Now we will be talking about certain exemptions given by the standard to the government related entities. Okay. Here is the chart to, summarize all this, discussion. Reporting entity is exempt from the disclosure requirements in relation to. So, reporting entity for which we are preparing the financial statements will be exempt from the disclosure requirements of this standard in relation to what? Related party transactions, outstanding balances, and commitments with a government. So, if any transactions are happening with the government and government is a related party, then those related party transactions and at year end outstanding balances arriving out of those transactions with the government, that is how much transaction has been done with the government and how much outstanding balance as on the reporting date is there in my financial statements with that particular government, and what are commitments given by the government to me or by me to the government are there on the reporting date. So there are exemptions from these three items if government that has a control or joint control or significant influence over the reporting entity. So suppose if reporting entity is say RE Limited, okay, reporting entity limited, and here is a central government, okay. Now this central government is holding control. So central government holds control in any of the companies. Yes, there are a lot of public sector enterprises which are being controlled by the central government. Now, whenever you see the shareholding pattern of those companies, for example, if you go and check the shareholding of ONGC, HPCL, BPCL, okay, all these companies, HAL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, or many more, right? All these public sector enterprises. So whenever you see the shareholder, so under the promoter category, you will find shareholding as President of India. President, it's looking like resident, huh? President of India, right? And through President of India, under the promoter category, you will see how much holding they have. For example, in few of the cases, you will see 60%. In few of the cases, you will see 70%. In few of the cases, you will see 95% even. Okay. So it means why President of India, central government is, controlling these entities. So ONGC and HPCL, BPCL, Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, National Aluminium Company, all these companies, are governed or controlled by the government only, right? So they are, while preparing their India's financial statements, it might be possible that these entities might have entered into certain transactions with the government itself, right? During the year. Possible, not possible? Possible. So standard is saying reporting entity, that is ONGC, HPCL, BPCL, etc., is exempt from the disclosure requirements in relation to these related party transactions and the outstanding balances and the commitments with the government, right? And government here means central government, right? CG, state government, right? Local government, right? Or national government or international government. The definition of the government we have studied at the beginning of the session. So that is the government means here. For the sake of simplicity, I'm talking central government here. That has the control. Now, control they already have by virtue of shareholding in those companies, right? 60%, 70%, 95%, as I explained, which is appearing in the promoter shareholding as a President of India, or a significant influence. Suppose in case they do not have the major shareholding, suppose this President of India, instead of holding more than 50%, might have been having a say 20% or 25% stake in a particular company, right? So in that case, they might be having a significant influence, or it might be possible that President of India with other parties controls that entity, right? So control, joint control, or significant influence over the reporting entity, right? So that is the condition. And another entity that is a related party because same government has control, joint control, or significant influence over both the reporting entities. Now, एक तो हो गया ट्रांजेक्शन विद द गवर्नमेंट और एक हो गया ट्रांजेक्शन विद अनदर गवर्नमेंट ओन्ड एंटिटी. फॉर एग्जांपल ट्रांजेक्शन बिटवीन ओएनजीसी एंड एचपीसीएल, राइट? बिकॉज both are government HPCL. So because ONGC and HPCL both are government owned companies, so if there are any transactions between ONGC and HPCL, in that case even this exemption or relaxation applies, right? So transactions, balances and commitments with government and transaction balances and commitments with any other entity which is also controlled by the government, right? So relaxation applies to both. Now, this is the relaxation. Now standard says, okay, if you want to claim this exemption or relaxation for these disclosures, then at least do some disclosure. So now the standard says, if a reporting entity applies this exemption, it shall still disclose the following. What it will need, it needs to disclose the transaction. So in the exemption section, they are saying that exemption from the normal disclosure is there, provided these special disclosures are done, right? So these special disclosures are again the transaction itself and the outstanding balance itself. So this is the same disclosure now, which we have been talking about earlier as well. So we were disclosing the transaction, we were disclosing the outstanding balances, right? And we were disclosing the commitments. So here you are not seeing the commitments, right? So commitment is skipped. So basically commitments are not required to be disclosed because that is not coming up in this special disclosure, but the transaction and the outstanding balances still needs to be disclosed, right? So this is the exemption and this is the requirement if we claim the exemption, right? Now, what we need to exactly disclose? The name of the government. We will say, boss, what is the name of the government? It is a central government, it is a state government, it is a local government, is it national government or international government? Which government? Name. Then nature of the government's relationship with the entity, whether it has control, that is, it is holding share capital more than 50% in my company, or it is a joint control, or it has a significant influence. So I will say the name of the government, I will say the nature of the relationship, right? And then sufficient detail of the related party transactions, right? What that detail would be: nature of the transaction and amount of the transaction. And then for other transactions that are collectively significant, a qualitative and quantitative indication of their extent. Now, from this entire episode, what we have learned? In this episode, what we have learned is, if reporting entity is having a relationship with the government by virtue of government being controlling this entity, that is, they are holding more than 50% shareholding for the sake of simplicity, or they are joint controlling this entity with some shareholding with them and in conjunction with the shareholding with any other shareholder, or they are exercising significant influence over this entity, right? So if this entity is either being controlled by the government or jointly controlled by the government or significantly influenced by the government, then only this relaxation applies for the transactions happened between this reporting entity and the government, right? This is one leg. Another leg is if this government has any other entity as well, which is also being controlled, jointly controlled, or significantly influenced by this government, then any transaction between these two entities as well, right? This reporting entity and this this entity, which is a related party to this entity by virtue of having a common parent or common joint controller, right? So transactions between them is also relaxed, right? This is the exemption. What is the exemption? Related party transactions, don't do disclosure. Outstanding balances, don't do disclosure. Commitment, don't do disclosure. This is a prima facie exemption. But thereafter, standard came up and said, if you want to claim this exemption, then at least do this. What we need to do? Disclose the transaction and the outstanding balance. So transaction and outstanding balance is again being asked if we are claiming the exemption. So the only benefit we are getting is we don't need to disclose the commitments, right? Because that is not being asked by the special disclosure. So transaction is anyway again asked, and outstanding balance is again anyway asked. Name of the government is asked. Nature of the relationship is also asked. So anyway, even if we wouldn't have exercised the exemption, we would end up doing the same disclosure: name of the government, nature of the relationship, transaction, and the outstanding balances, right? Still we are doing the same, but only relaxation is for the commitments. So commitments we will not be disclosing anymore, right? The another set of exemption or benefit by claiming the exemption and doing the special disclosure is if the transactions, other transactions that are individually not significant but are collectively significant, then we can say a qualitative and quantitative indication of their extent rather than disclosing all those individual transactions which are not individually significant. Let's see one of the sample disclosure from the government owned entity of Cochin Shipyard Limited. So this is again a government owned company, right? So government of India through President of India controls this, okay? Controls. You can check the shareholding pattern. Now, how the disclosure of Cochin Shipyard is made in their audited annual financial statements for March 22. Nature of the transaction. Transaction with other related parties. As CSL, Cochin Shipyard Limited is a government company under the control of Ministry of Shipping, MOS. The company has availed exemption. So first, what we need to say, if we are claiming this exemption, we will say in our financial statements that we are availing this exemption from what? A detailed disclosure prepared under Ind AS 24 with respect to the related party transactions with the government and the government related entities. That is, with the government and other entities which are also controlled or jointly controlled or significantly influenced by the government. So we have used the term government related entities, right? However, as required under Ind AS 24, following are the individually significant transactions. So now what the relaxation is, only those transactions which are individually material or individually significant needs to be disclosed. If they are not individually material or not individually significant, those transactions I can skip, disclosing, right? So that is the benefit of this exemption. Otherwise, you must have been thinking, what is the benefit? The same thing is relaxed, the same thing is asked. Yes, prima facie it looks like, but the benefit is we don't end up disclosing all the transactions if we claim the exemptions. If we do not claim the exemptions, then there is no materiality at all. Immaterial transactions or material transactions, there is no classification. All the transactions needs to be disclosed. If we are claiming this exemption, then only material or individually significant transactions needs to be disclosed. Now, what the disclosure is? Transactions and the balances with the government and the government related entities by the parent company CSL. Now, secondment to subsidiary. So they might have given some staffing, their own staff on secondment, loan staffing, right? Because that was regarded as a material, that's why they have disclosed. It was sitting in the previous year, but in the current year it is zero. So because it is there in the previous year and was disclosed last year as a significant transaction, so it is still here, right? So in next year, it will go away because current year it is a zero, right? Secondment to subsidiary, again, another subsidiary. So again, the same thing, right? Investment in NCD, because this is a individually significant transaction, hence disclosed. Investment in NCD, investment in right issue, right? So all these are other government related entities which are being controlled by the same government as the Cochin shipyard, right? So they are disclosing this. Now, there might be many more transactions which the Cochin shipyard management considered as insignificant. Hence, they skipped on disclosure for those transactions, right? So that is the benefit of claiming the exemptions. And there is no commitment disclosure, right? Any questions on this? And if it is fine, clear, just let me know in the chat box. Please be quick. Okay. Now, reporting entity shall consider the closeness of the related party relationship and other factors relevant in establishing when a transaction will be considered as significant and when the transaction will not be considered as significant, right? So level of significance, we need to, decide basis on these facts. So these are all given by the standard, right? So significant in terms of the size, right? So significant in terms of amount. For example, more than 1% of my total revenue during the year. That might be a threshold management may come up as to decide significance. Carried out on non-market terms. So I have purchased a land from the government which has a fair market value of rupees 100 crore. Okay, 100 crore. But government has given to me at 10 crore only. Right? So non-market terms. Right? Outside normal day-to-day business operations. So generally, I don't purchase, a particular, material or particular goods, but because government asked me to purchase, hence I have purchased. So that is a significant transaction. So for example, Cochin shipyard generally doesn't purchase land because they don't need land as such, right? But government forced them to purchase this land parcel. So they have purchased it. So that then in that case needs to be disclosed. So anything which company doesn't generally do in normal day-to-day business operations, and if it is doing that because the transaction is happening with the government or the another government related entity, so that needs to be considered as a significant and required disclosure, right? Carried at non-market terms. In terms of amount, it is material. So these are the indicators which will help us in deciding whether the transactions will be regarded as significant transaction or not for the purpose of special disclosure after claiming the exemption from the normal disclosures. Disclose to regulatory or supervisory authority. So if any transaction between the reporting entity and the government or the related entity, government related entity, has already been required approvals and disclosures or submissions to some regulator, then those transactions are considered as by virtue of this clause important, hence needs to be disclosed. Reported to the senior management. So if there are any transactions which required to be reported to the senior management of the company, then it means they are, important ones, and hence requires disclosures in the financial statements as well, so that users of the financial statements gets into the shoes of the management and understand the nature of the transaction and which transactions are required shareholders approval before, entering into those transactions. Those are considered as significant. So this is an indicative list of, indicators given by the standard. There could be many more. So we have to apply our professional skepticism in identifying and deciding which all transactions are considered to be significant for the purpose of disclosure under this standard, right? Can we quickly try our hands on this question? So government G is, directly controlling entity 2 as well as entity 1. Entity 1 has entity A and entity B. Entity C and entity DD, are the subsidiaries of the entity 2. Now, entity 1 has a KMP, Mr. X, right? So these are the subsidiary, and subsidiary, right? And this is direct control. So this is a government controlled, right? And this is also government controlled. Now, examine on which all entities exemption will be applicable for government related entities. So will it be applicable for entity 1? Yes or no? Yes. Will it be applicable for entity 2? Yes or no? Yes. And the subsidiary entity C and D? Yes. Entity A and B? Yes. With the for the transactions with the entity 1 or entity 2, right? Or the entity government itself, right? Same case here and same case here and same case here. But for entity B, transaction with entity C applicable? No. Entity A, transaction with entity B applicable? No. Entity C, transaction with entity D applicable? No. Right? So either it should be controlled by other entities, should be controlled by either the government, right? Or it is a government related entity only. So transaction either should be with the government or the government related entity. Then only exemption applies, right? Not to the fellow subsidiaries. Right? So this is the answer. And furthermore, because here we are talking about only entities, so KMP will anyway out of the box, right? So exemption does not apply to the transactions with person X, which is a KMP, right? So KMP transactions anyway needs to be disclosed, right? So relaxation applies only to transactions with the government or the transactions with the government related entities. Now, there are certain gap differences between Ind AS and AS 18, although I have picked up a few during the respective discussions since morning. So, definition of relative, right? So, what is the difference? So, IGAP uses the relatives of an individual. Ind AS says close member of the family, right? Then close member of the family, Ind AS specifically defines who all are to be treated as close member, and it includes domestic partner, which was not there in IGAP, right? Then related parties in case of JVs. So AS 18 considers co-venturers or co-associates are not related to each other, but Ind AS considers, JVs and associates are related to each other, but associate to associate are not related. So JV and associate are related to each other, but associate and associate are not related, right? That we have already discussed. Here, both JV and associate are not related, right? Post-employment benefit plans, earlier under IGAP, we were not, disclosing these as related parties. Now, because Ind AS specifically asked for these disclosures, so we will be disclosing all these trusts and the transactions with them in the financial statement as a related party transactions, right? Then compensation, AS does not specifically require any KMP compensation to be disclosed, but Ind AS requires KMP compensation in the 5 categories, right? Long-term, short-term, termination, post-employment, and the share-based payments. Those 5 categories needs to be disclosed. Then AS 18 does not talk about any next most senior parent, etc., etc., etc. It is just silent. So Ind AS 24 says, if my parent does not produce CFS, then I will be stating the name of the next most senior parent who will be producing the CFS that we have already discussed. So these are the just key differences in case you get some theory question in the examination. What are the differences between the Ind AS 24 and the corresponding IGAP AS 18? So it would be, helpful for you. KMP. Ind AS covers KMP of the parent as well, right? We discussed AS 18 does not cover. It only covers KMP of the reporting entity, right? Then government and controlled enterprises, there is all specific, requirement, exemptions and disclosures under Ind AS. AS 18 defines state controlled entities as an enterprise which is under the control of the central government and or any state government. But here the definition of the government is government refers to government agencies and similar bodies, whether local, national, international. So international government are not covered under AS 18, but here it is covered, right? Government related entities, there are certain information required to be disclosed for the government related entities. AS 18 presently exempts the disclosure of all the information with the government or government related entities, right? So there is an exemption under Ind AS, but certain disclosure are still required, right? So that's all on the comparison and on the standard. Now we are over time, but still, I would like to quickly, complete a few of the MCQs which have been there in the examination in the past, so that I will also, able to understand your understanding on the standard, and you will also be able to, test your knowledge on this quickly. We can spend 5 more minutes and then we will wind up the session. So before I start with the MCQ, if there is any question, please drop in the chat box. Otherwise, I can ask. I can start with the quick some of the MCQs for your benefit. And MCQs, because they generally being asked in the examination, are quite scoring. I have mentioned this uh, in my earlier sessions as well. So please do try most of the MCQs or any of the standards wherever you can find from. So let's start. An entity that has a common director with the entity is not required to make minimum disclosures prescribed under Ind AS 24. True or false? I'm just waiting for your answer in the chat box. It is the simplest one. Okay. Kirti is saying true. Correct. Why? Just for everybody's, clearance. So Mr. X is a director in entity A and in entity B, right? Director, director. So A and B are not related to each other, right? So since they are not related to each other, so no disclosure is required. Correct? Let's try this one. Ind AS 24 requires disclosure of the compensation of the KMP. Which of the following would not be considered as compensation for the purpose of this standard? A, B, C, or D? I think it's also a relatively easier one. Just recall the 5 categories of the compensation defined by this standard. So, which is not a compensation category given in this standard? Short-term benefits, share-based payments, termination benefits, or reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses. A, B, C, D. D. Kirti is saying correct, because reimbursement of out-of-pocket expenses is not the category given in this standard, right? Which of the following statement relating to the disclosure under Ind AS 24 related parties are true? Statement A. The standard requires disclosure of the compensation of KMP personnel who are working in an executive capacity only. Statement B. Measurement of the transaction between the related parties shall be at fair value. Statement C. Parties having joint control over the reporting entity and the joint ventures in which the reporting entity is a venturer are covered by this standard. And statement D. Two venturers are not related parties simply because they share the joint control over a joint venture. Now, alternative options are A, B, C are true, A, C, D are true, A, B, D are true, C, D are true. So option 1, 2, 3, 4, you can say 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is how the MCQs, start become tricky, because first we need to understand which all options are true, then go and match up the, options given in alternative choices and come up with the correct answer. And this can happen only if we are crystal clear on the standard. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Any luck? Abdul is saying four, fourth option. Okay. So only C and D are true. Why? So A and B are not true. Why? Executive capacity only. I said in the start of the chapter that non-executive director are also covered, right? So this statement is false. The measurement, anyway, we did not discuss anything. So it is deemed false, right? Because standard doesn't talk about the measurement. So if a standard is all silent on the measurement, then any statement related to the measurement is not in the scope of the standard, right? Parties having joint control over the reporting entity. Parties having joint control over the reporting entity, right? So reporting entity, the entity who is preparing the financial statements, and parties who are having joint control. So A or B jointly controlling RE, and joint ventures in which the reporting entity is a venturer are covered by this standard. Yes. So parties, having a joint venture. So reporting entity के लिए both the joint venture parties, joint controllers A and B are covered. So this is true. And two venturers are not related simply because they share joint control. True. So only C and D are true. So fourth option is correct. Correct. A. Which of the following event would require disclosure in the financial statements of RP Group, a public company, limited company, under Ind AS 24 related party disclosure? The retirement benefit scheme of the group is managed by another merchant bank. Okay. An investment manager of the group retirement benefit scheme is also a non-executive director of the RP Group and received an annual fee for his services of 2.5 lakhs. So some another merchant banker is managing the retirement benefit scheme of the company. Retirement benefit scheme is a post-employment benefit plan of the company. Post-employment benefit plan is, considered as a related party for the entity, right? Now that investment manager is receiving an annual fees of rupees 2.5 lakh, which is not material in the group context. The company pays 16 crores per annum to the scheme and occasionally transfers assets into the scheme. So 16 crores is the annual contribution company is, depositing in that retirement scheme plan. In 2014, property, plant and equipment worth rupees 10 crore were also transferred into the scheme, and a recharge of administrative cost of 30 lakhs was made. Now, the contribution paid, the non-current asset transfer, and the charge of administrative, that is 10 crore and 30 lakh, and the contribution कितना था? 16 crore, right? 16 crore. All these needs to be disclosed. Contribution paid, asset transfer, and manager's fees needs to be disclosed. Manager's fees needs to be disclosed, and administrative fees, or all of the above. So there are four transactions. One is contribution paid 16 crore. Another is PP&E transfer 10 crores. Third is the administrative charge 30 lakhs. And fourth is the manager's fees 2.5 lakhs. So out of these four, which all needs to be disclosed? Number one, first three. Number two, contribution, asset transfer and manager's fees. Third, manager's fees and administrative cost only, or all of the above. A, B, C, or D, please. Nobody reached. Please respond. Abdul is saying B. Others? Okay. So option D, all of the above. So there are no exemptions or relaxations available anywhere for any parties other than the government, right? Have we discussed any exemptions or relaxations on account of materiality, immateriality for any transactions? What I have said throughout the session, all transactions needs to be disclosed with the related parties. Now, once I establish that this investment manager is a related party, or this scheme is a related party, I have to disclose all transactions, irrespective of the fact that group considered that amount was immaterial. So group considered amount immaterial, but still standard doesn't allow, you know, any exemption on that. So this is the uh, a detailed, rationale for that option. You can, you know, sorry. Ind AS 24 requires a reporting entity to disclose relationships dash irrespective of whether there have been transactions with them or not. So with whom? With the suppliers and customers, with the parents and subsidiaries, with the government, or between the associates. A, B, C, or D. So category 1 disclosures are being talked about here. Category 1 disclosures are mandatory for whom? Customer, suppliers, parent subsidiaries, government, or associates. Oh, this is the easiest one. What happened? Correct. B. Parent subsidiaries are mandatory category 1 disclosure. Even if there are no transactions, we have to disclose the relationships. Intra-group related party transactions and outstanding balances are dash, except for those between an investment entity and its subsidiary measured at fair value through P&L in the preparation of the consolidated financial statements of the group. So D, recognized, eliminated, presented separately, or disclosed. A, B, C, D. He eliminated. While preparing the CFS, consolidated financial statements, we generally, eliminate intra-group transactions and corresponding balances. Correct. Next, a related party transaction is a transfer of resource, services, or obligations between a reporting entity and the related party, unless the market price is charged. When no price is charged, regardless of whether the price is at fair, at the lower of the current, at a price that is lower than the current market price. A, B, C, D. So regardless of the price is charged, right? So I have mentioned this, that whether the price is charged or not, disclosure or identification of related party doesn't get impacted, right? So standard is not worried or concerned about the price at which the transaction is taking place. The standard is only worried about if the transaction is taking place, that needs to be disclosed, right? Okay. Statement 1. In considering each possible related party relationship, attention is directed to the substance of the relationship and not merely the legal form. Statement 2. Two entities that have a director or other member of KMP personnel in common, or a member of key management personnel of one entity has significant influence of the other entity, then both these entities are considered to be the related parties. True, 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 false, false, true, false, false. A, B, C, D. Both the statements are true. First is true, second is false. First is false, second is true, both are false. हाँ जी. Abdul is saying B. Correct. So first is true because the standard always says substance over form needs to be, considered, right? And the second statement is false. This we have discussed multiple times. So Mr. X, entity A, entity B, KMP, KMP, right? Related? No, not KMP. SI. Related? No. Correct? Entity Z has control over entities A, B, and C and has SI over entities D and E. Entity C has a significant influence over entity F. In the separate financial statements of entity Z, which of the following is not a related party? See, this is, are you seeing how tricky MCQs can be, right? So MCQ is simple. The only thing is structure we need to immediately, drawing up in our mind, right? As we, read through the MCQ paragraph. Because in examination, chart will not come. Paragraph will, only come. So instead of, reading the paragraph again and again, start drawing the chart immediately as you read, right? So that your chart gets ready immediately and then you can quickly answer. Otherwise, you will end up spending much more significant time than required to answer the MCQ. So this MCQ is easy, but the chart needs to be, popping up in your mind immediately as you read through the statement. And that can happen only by practice. Practice a lot. So what is your answer here? Please focus on the word. Which of the following is not a related party? Okay. Right? This is the chart. So this is control, this is control, and this is control. So A, B, C are all subsidiaries. D is a associate, right? Associate. And F is an associate of C. Now, for entity Z, which is not a related party. अब तो मैंने चार्ट भी ड्रॉ कर दिया है, बता दो फटाफट. Okay. Abdul is saying C, entity F. Okay. Others? Everybody is related party. So none of the foregoing is not a related party. Right? Why? A is related, yes, subsidiary. B is related, yes, subsidiary. C is related, yes, subsidiary. D is related, yes, significant influence. Now, F is related, yes, because it is an associate of the subsidiary. So, associate of my subsidiary is a related party for the parent company. There is no doubt about that. We have covered this in our practical examples earlier as well. Same structure, question is changed. Entity A, which of the following is not a related party? Now, earlier we have identified for Z, right? Now we need to talk about A. For A, which is not a related. So for A, Z is related, yes. B is related, yes. C is related, yes. D is related, yes. Associate within the group. Now, for A, F, associate of my fellow subsidiary, is related, yes or no? That is the question basically. Now tell me. So which is not a related, D, E, F or none? Again, none. Right? Why? Go back to the chart. So F is my associate of my fellow subsidiary, right? And A is related with C by virtue of control of Z, right? Common control of Z over A and C. So A and C are fellow subsidiaries. So fellow subsidiaries associate is anyway related to the subsidiary, correct? Okay. Now, same chart, question is changed. For entity D, who is a related party now? Earlier we were talking about who is not a related. Now we are talking about who is a related, right? So let's me get back to the chart again. So for entity D, this one, this entity, now we are talking about who is related party. So Z is related, yes. ABC are related, yes. Now the question comes whether F is related or not. So for an associate of a subsidiary within the group is related or not? That is the question. So entity Z is a related party, right? Because for associate, E and F are not related. So for associate of subsidiary is not related, right? For associate of subsidiary is not related. Okay. Now, next one is entity Z has control over entity A, B, and C. A, B, and C control and significant influence over D, right? SI. So this is control, and this is control. Now entity C has significant influence over entity F, SI. Okay. Now, in the consolidated financial statements of entity Z, so entity Z's consolidated financial statement, who is not a related party? So while preparing the consolidated, all the subsidiaries will get eliminated. ABC will get eliminated, yes or no? Yes. So ABC will not be subsidiary or will not be related party in the CFS. But D will be there as a related, yes. F will be there as a related, yes. Right? So D and F will be related. So C, it is a subsidiary, will not be related. So option 1, entity C will not be related. Clear? That was it from my side. Thank you all for listening me patiently. I took some time because the standard was very comprehensive and lengthy, and I just don't want to miss on MCQs as well. I hope that was helpful to you. And please let me know if there is any doubt or query you have. Otherwise, session is over from my side. We can wind up. Yes. I'm just waiting if somebody is having any query or question in the chat box. Else session is over. Give 30 seconds. Thanks, Shruti, for your nice comment. So, there is as such no pattern. All the standards are equally important. Don't know. Exam setter, may come up with a 7 marks question or may come up just with an MCQ or may come up with some theory question. So it all depended on the mood and mindset of the exam setter. But standard is very important. Okay. So Ashovi, I'm just having some queries from the participants that the session which we had recorded for, Ind AS 21. So few of the participants are just asking where that has been uploaded. So if you can quickly, help them, that would be helpful. And on that note, the session is over from my side. Wish you all the best for your examination. Thanks.